Columbus, Georgia. This is your City Council. Mayor Teresa Tomlinson. City Manager Isaiah Hughley. Pops Barnes, District 1. Glenn Davis, District 2. Bruce Huff, District 3. Evelyn Turner Pugh, Mayor Pro Tem and District 4. Mike Baker, District 5. Gary Allen, District 6. Mimi Woodson, District 7. Walker Garrett, District 8. Judy Thomas, Post 9 at-large Counselor. Skip Henderson, Post 10 at-large Counselor. Tiny Washington, Clerk of Council. And City Attorney, Clifton Fay. Columbus, Georgia, this is your City Council.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the August 22nd meeting of the Columbus City Council. We're so glad to have you with us. I want to recognize some folks we have in the audience. Today we have Central Texas University out of Fort Benning, Georgia. They're here with their History and Government class. So if you're with the History and Government class at Central Texas University out of Fort Benning, just stand up and let us recognize you. All right. We appreciate you all, appreciate what you do for our country and for this community, and we're so glad to have you with us tonight. And we appreciate your interest in our local government, so thank you. We also, of course, every time we come together, get started on the right foot by having an invocation. So at this time, we want to welcome Father Dan O'Connell, who is with the Whole Family Church, and we're going to ask him to come forward here to the podium, and we're so pleased, Father, to have you with us.
Thank you. Lord, we thank you for faithful government leaders, international, national, and local. We ask that your wisdom and courage may constantly guide their decisions and actions for the benefit of everyone they serve. That public servants inspired by Christ's love will seek ways to foster peace and justice in all lands. That those who govern nations will make decisions based on the welfare of their people rather than on access to wealth or power. That world leaders will find a way to bring peace and justice to the region of Jesus' birth. That political leaders at all levels will consciously choose life-giving solutions to societal problems. That rulers in countries, states, cities, and all civic domains will open their eyes and quicken their response to the needs of their citizens. That governmental leaders will find ways to restore hope and dignity to those suffering from war and natural disasters. That all who lead countries, townships, or other local governmental entities may be mindful of the voices of those who suffer at the margins of society. Gracious God, your Son, Jesus Christ, is the head of every ruler and authority. In him we have an example of compassionate leadership and merciful service. Help us and our leaders to follow his example in all things. We make this prayer through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Father O'Connell, thank you so very much for providing that invocation consistent with your faith tradition, and thank you for what you do and your congregation does for this community.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you very much.
All right, we've got the Rigdon Road Elementary School students with us today. They are experts at this. They do this all the time, so they're going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. As they assemble, if you would stand and prepare for them to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, very good. That was just wonderful. Tell us your name and how old you are.
Hello, my name is Aaliyah Cheney. I'm in the 3rd grade, and my teacher name is Miss Manning.
Hello, I am Terrence Harrell. My name,
That's okay.
I am in 5th grade. My teacher is Miss Leonard.
Hello, my name's Aaliyah Pendleton. I am in 2nd grade, and my teacher's name is Dr. Williams.
Hello, my name is Terry Harrell, and I'm 7 years old, and I'm in the 2nd grade, and my teacher's name is Dr. Williams.
Hello, my name is Autumn. I am in 2nd grade. My teacher's name is Dr. Williams, and I'm 7 years old.
Hello, my name is Anaya Kennedy. I'm in 4th grade. My teacher is Miss Cheney.
Well, you
I'm
guys
9.
did a really good job. And Dr. Reeves, introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Dr. Rosie Williams. I'm a 2nd grade teacher at Rigdon Road Elementary. On behalf of Ms. Charlene Robinson, we appreciate your invitation and willing to come back with more. And I'd like to thank the parents who took the time out tonight to bring their children in and support them. Could you please stand, Rigdon Road parents?
Let's,
We really appreciate them. Thank you.
Dr. Williams, thank you so much. And I know you're proud of these
I
students.
am proud of my babies. This is their first time and they didn't miss a
Well,
beat.
they did a great job. So will you guys come back and help us out again soon? Good. Thank you very much. Let's give them another round of applause, folks. All right. Yeah, right. Well, we're going to go ahead and jump into our agenda. Tonight we have an update, a presentation from the Tax Assessor's office on an update on property assessments. So, Mr. Williams, we're glad to see you here tonight. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Mr. City Manager, ladies and gentlemen of council. As you know, I'm John Williams. I'm the Deputy Chief Appraiser, and I'm here to update you on appeals. It's a standard opening slide for every time I speak before you the last many months. This, by the way, was as of 2:30 today. So if the people that do the work in the background are upset with me, I apologize, but I wanted to get the most up-to-date information that I could and not run with what we had last night. As of 2:30 today, we have 8,716 appeals processed. We still have, by my estimate, about 500 remaining in the mail that came in the mail that need to be processed. This is 12.53% of the taxable real property accounts we have in the city. The assessed value in dispute from these appeals is 2.8% of the total taxable digest, and I'll go over that again in a moment, what that means. Matter of fact, I'll cover it right now. Value in dispute is the difference between the assessment value on their 2017 notice of assessment and one of two things. Either their return value, and that's a specific form that they file between the date of January 1 and April 1 of the assessment year, so this year. Either, if they didn't file a return, law states that in essence they did file a return, and that was their 16 assessed value. So if a property owner actually filed a return for their real property, it would be the difference between that returned amount and the 2017 assessment. If they did not file a return this year, it would be the difference between the 2017 assessment that went out on their notice and the assessment from last year. So of those 8,716 appeals that we've processed, 3,156 of those have been reviewed. That's 36.21%. Of those reviewed, 1,726 have been recommended for a reduction, and that's 55% of those reviewed. 1,076, or 34%, are recommended no change. 255 of those are designated for a division manager review. Oftentimes that is me. They've been elevated to my level of review because of some complication the appraiser just didn't feel comfortable making a decision on. So that gets elevated to my level or another manager's review. And then 99 or 3% of those appeals have been designated as an administrative manager review. And as I've said in the past, those are oftentimes a removal of a homestead exemption, some other form of administrative review that needs to take place to clear that review, that appeal up. And those are the two slides I'm here to present to you tonight. Of course, as always, I am available for your questions.
Okay. Let's open it up to council for questions. We have Councilor Garrett.
Questions I brought up when I presented to the Board of Tax Assessors on Monday, and I forgot to put in my email. I wanted to see if you might be able to answer it today, but who decided to remove the variables when they ran the property tax or the property analysis?
Who decided to remove the variables when they ran the analysis?
My understanding is things like floodplain and different factors that would play into the property tax value were removed during this process.
I've heard that before. As a matter of fact, I heard some comments from other council about that very question. Floodplain specifically was mentioned, I think, last week or the last time you all met. And I checked with my residential manager, because oftentimes that would come into play with residential properties, and he said to his knowledge that wasn't a characteristic that was kept in the system as floodplain. What this probably refers to is my earlier comments when we discussed erroneous things in the system from the conversion, and one of those examples was a detention pond. The influence of detention pond showed up in a lot of accounts, and so I made the decision to remove detention ponds from all accounts so that we could go back in and make sure, number one, if there's 25,000 parcels that show a detention pond in this county, that's erroneous. I don't have the number, but there 99 out of 100 of those that we saw, if not more than that, were erroneous. There was no detention pond on the parcel, so that was removed. I don't remember removing just carte blanche, just take all the influences to value, negative influences to value off of the parcels. That was not done, to my knowledge. And I would have been the one to make that call or to at least be a part of making that decision.
Sure. And I know, I think you've presented to council, and it may have come up in the meeting as well, that there have been some neighborhoods that y'all found anomalies and you've mailed new assessments. Do you have any idea how many parcels have gotten new assessments?
I believe when we talked about neighborhoods, and one of them was mentioned was Bellwood, where the rezoning that had taken place several years ago had changed it to commercial zoning. And so the value of the land was valued at commercial, and then it was still had a house on it with a residence, not a house that was an office, but a residence. And so we have gone back into those parcels, and there's a code for that house on a commercial property. It's called a 101, doesn't mean anything to you. We've gone back and queried the system and identified those and put into the system what I would call an administrative flag that says if these people don't appeal, then we're going to correct that after the appeal period. I don't remember telling this body that we would send out new notices. I do remember saying that we would identify those and send letters after the appeal period to the affected property owners. There's been over 800 properties, not just the 101s, and there are 4 different categories that we looked at, but over 800, and Steve might remember that number, but there were over 800 properties that we've identified as, in that instance, at a commercial land rate on a property that was still being used residential, and that stems from zoning.
Okay. Did anything like that happen in Midland?
If you're talking about the H accounts and that type of thing, we've identified a big section of H account properties that when I looked at one today, the rate for that, I think it was 3 acres, had a higher rate than the rate for the parent acreage. Well, that needs to be addressed, and that property was appealed, I made a correction on that appeal. It's one of those that was elevated to division manager review. All of the H account appeals are being elevated to division manager review, and I'm looking at them.
Okay.
So that's an example of, when you say Midland, I automatically think of H accounts,
Sure.
a large tract of land. That's the type of thing we're seeing out there.
If I know you said a new assessment wouldn't be mailed out, but a letter would be mailed out if a property did not get appealed and it was part of the 800 properties where you determined something improperly valued in the system.
Needed an adjustment,
Needed an adjustment.
yes.
If they did not file an appeal, will they still get that adjustment that was to their, I guess, positive to them?
We will notify them of what we found and what we did, and there will be an adjustment.
That's all I've got right now.
Okay.
Okay. We have Counselor Thomas.
Mr. Williams, thank you. First of all, I want to say to you and to the other folks from the tax assessor's office who are here, almost to the person, of people who have talked with me, who have had interaction with your office, have said it has been a positive interaction, that they have been what they think is well-treated and courteous and quickly in and out, and just wanted you to know that and to convey that to the staff that you are working with.
Thank you. That's good to hear. I will pass that on to our staff.
And I do have a couple of questions on the value in dispute.
Yes.
Is this the value of the 8,700 that are in appeals that are processed, or is that of the 3156 that you have, does that make sense? The 3156 that you have reviewed?
The value in dispute would be represented by the 8,716 appeals. That is relative to that 8716 number.
I know that in order for some things to happen on the state level, we have to reach that 8%.
That's
And
correct.
so I was wondering, is this 2.8% of the 8,700 or of the 3,100 that you have reviewed?
We are able to capture the value in dispute as soon as we process the appeal into the system. So those 8716 that are in our system, that value in dispute is relative to that number.
And you think you've got about 500 more?
Yes, we had between 800 and 900 this morning, and we've processed more than about 400, I believe, today. So we've been averaging about 500 processed appeals a day, sometimes less, sometimes more. So I suspect we'll be through processing those by tomorrow or the next day at the latest.
One of the other questions that I have been asked very often is how long should a taxpayer wait until they hear from you? How long will it take them to get a notice that says you have been, this is what we did with your appeal?
And that just is a case-by-case basis. I wish I could tell you it's going to be 3 weeks and they get a notice from us. Because of the unusual amount of appeals that we're processing and reviewing, it's going to take longer. We have statutorily 180 days between the time they file the appeal and the time that we communicate the result of that appeal to them. To my knowledge, we've never taken 180 days to do that. To date, as of this week, once the letters go out from the Monday meeting, yesterday's meeting, last week we had about 900 letters that have gone out, and these are notifications of a reduction. So there should be probably 1,200 letters by the end of the week that have gone out that have notified an owner that they have received a recommended reduction based on their appeal.
And that 1,200 is of the 1,700 that were recommended for reduction and the 1,076 that were not. So
That's correct.
12 out of about 2,000.
Well, that's about 27, right? 1,726 and 1,076.
Oh, I'm
but
sorry, yes.
I keep calling them letters, and let me correct myself, Ms. Middleton's probably twitching behind me. They're not letters. They're 30-day notices of assessment. So they look just like the original notice of assessment. It's a state mandated form, and it has the new value on it. I say letter because I just misspeak sometimes. It's a 30-day notice. So that 30 days is a 30-day window the taxpayer, the property owner, has to further appeal that their valuation. If they don't like what we've sent them a 30-day notice to say, you know what, we've reduced your value based on what we've looked at, and here it is. If they don't like it, they have 30 days to continue or not. They can accept it. If they like it, they don't do anything. And that 30 days expires, and that's the value. If they don't like it, they can call us. Well, I just misspoke again. They need to communicate in writing to us that they wish to continue that appeal to the board, typically the Board of Equalization. It could be to an arbitrator if it met certain parameters. It could be on to Superior Court.
Okay. Of those 55% roughly that you have that have been recommended for reduction, is there a pattern? Is there a reason why those have been recommended for reduction? I know that Counselor Garrett and I have talked about some of the, I don't know, factors or whatever that we thought had been removed, and you've said not, but a lot of people have said to me about the floodplain or the detention pond or whatever. So is there any kind of a pattern in all of those, that 55%?
Other than the areas that we've talked about, which is that Bellwood property, and in my mind I've got neighborhood numbers that are typically, and if there were a pattern, it would be residential property on commercially zoned land that used to be residential, but City Council approved a change in zoning, so that zoning change, highest and best use, we've talked about that before, changes the valuation of that land, and then to see that it was given a very high rate, commercial land rate. Those are pretty constant in those areas. As far as a pattern, those areas, that would be one pattern. Land values out in these H accounts out in Midland that we talked about, or Upatoy that has not been mentioned, but land out there is valued less than land closer to town. And so the few that I've reviewed out there needed a reduction in land. So I can't really say there's a pattern because I only get the complex ones. There's thousands.
Right.
Or over 1,000 that have been seen by my staff, and they see the normal ones that I'm not sure they're tracking a pattern or not. I don't know if that answers your question. But
Yeah,
that's what I'm
that's
saying.
fine. And then my last question, there were some of us who were at the, and I don't know, Ms. Williams, if this is something you would answer or maybe the chair or Mr. Lomax would answer. When we were at the Board of Tax Assessors meeting last week, the issue of the resolution that council passed came up and was tabled. And so my question is, when will that come off the table? When will that discussion be had? And when will that discussion be had?
If I may, I would like to defer that question to either the attorney or the chair.
Okay.
And let them take that for me.
Good evening. Randy Lomax. I'm the attorney for the Board of Tax Assessors. That did come up for discussion in Monday's meeting. It was discussed
Yes, I'm sorry, yesterday or?
Yesterday.
Okay.
And it was rejected by the board, and we notified the city attorney of that yesterday afternoon.
Do either you or the chair want to give us some of the reasoning for that?
I'll be happy to.
All right.
I think you were at the meeting Monday a week ago when I discussed some of my concerns then.
I
And-
heard your concerns. I didn't hear any concerns from the members of the Tax Assessors Board.
Well, the concerns that were expressed by various members of the Board of Tax Assessors include the fact that of the 79,000 parcels in Muskogee County, 23,086 parcels in Muskogee County were the recipient of valuation decreases, and reverting to the 2016 digest would negatively or potentially negatively impact those owners. The resolution did not state how we would address those people who would be negatively impacted. The resolution did not address the thousands of pending, quite frankly, 8,700 pending appeals, which have already been submitted to the Board of Tax Assessors, which we believe would still need to be addressed. The resolution did not address the possibility of the board having to provide a new notice of assessment to all property owners because their real property value is being changed by reverting to the 2016 digest. OCGA Section 485306 requires such a notice, and if we had to resend another notice, we feel that would delay us from delivering the digest to the tax commissioner, which would also delay the tax commissioner being able to send out her bills. The resolution did not address homestead status changes. That would be people who applied and received a homestead or homesteads who have been removed. The resolution did not address the approval of conservation use valuation or similar tax programs which occurred during 2016, which would be beneficial to the owners for 2017. The resolution did not address any changes in the taxable status of real property which occurred during 2016. For example, people who had requested and received, who had filed a request for non-taxability and that request had been approved. And the resolution did not address property purchases which occurred during 2016. I believe there's a statute that says that the value of property in a sale transaction or the sales price in a sales transaction is the maximum amount that we can assess in the year following the sale. Those were issues that were discussed by the board members and that caused the board to have concerns about what happens if we reverted back to the 2016 digest. There are also concerns that reverting to the 2016 digest does not cure the problem if you believe that a problem exists, which obviously many of you do. It would only be a Band-Aid. The board is trying to focus on addressing the appeals, correcting any valuation errors which may exist, and trying to move forward with a proper digest. Reverting back to the 2016 digest, the board just didn't feel that's the proper thing to do. For that reason, a vote was taken and it was unanimously approved to reject or decline the resolution of the City Council.
Well, this is why we had asked that at least why I had been a party to the asking of the board to be at our last council meeting so we could have discussed some of these items with them. Of the 23,000 parcels that you say were, that the value was reduced, do you know how many of those, anybody, know how many of those are under the tax freeze and so therefore it would not affect those?
Do we have that number?
I do. Let me pull out a piece of paper. I don't want to just tell you off the top of my head what that is. It is 12,000 and something. $12,493.
So,
Of the 23,000.
So saying 23,000 would be adversely affected is about 13,000 off, right?
Well, we were talking about the number of parcels decreased. It's 23,086.
But then each time we have heard that, Mr. Williams, and I'm sorry if I'm sounding argumentative, but I am.
It's all right.
Every time we have heard that, the next sentence has been, and so these people would be harmed if we roll back to the 2016. And my assertion is not if my tax is frozen. I would not be harmed. But I understand that the board has taken that action. And Mr. Lomax, I have to tell you that when you said this is just a Band-Aid, I have over my long lifetime put many a Band-Aid over a wound on my body until it healed. And that's what we were asking you to do.
Yes, ma'am, I have put Band-Aids over wounds as well. I also clean the wounds, I apply medication, and I do whatever I can to help those wounds heal as quickly as possible. That is what the Board of Tax Assessors intends to do. We intend to do whatever we can to resolve the appeals, and anyone who has a value in dispute, we're going to address that.
Well, I don't want to get in a fight with the Board of Tax Assessors.
We don't want to get in a fight either.
And I just wish that there had been some way that we could have had some conversation about this entire issue. I appreciate Mr. Williams coming, and he's been very forthright with us. He's given us lots of information. But we've not had an opportunity, and still have not had an opportunity, to speak to the members of the board. And we have spoken to their attorney, but we have not spoken to them. And I'm sorry we haven't had that opportunity. I think that there could have been a lot of things taken care of with a lot less animosity on every side of this issue.
Well, there's no animosity on our side, but now Mr. Garrett knew exactly how to address the board. He emailed us, requested to be on the agenda, came to the board meeting on Monday, and carried on a conversation with the board. The board meets almost every Monday, and individuals, there were a couple of individuals there yesterday, have the opportunity to request to be on the agenda.
Did they have chairs yesterday?
We may have had a couple of chairs. We removed the chairs at the request of the Sheriff's Department. So if there was a complaint about the chairs being removed, I would address that to the Sheriff's Department.
Thank you, Mayor.
All right, let's see, we have Counselor Baker. Hold on a second, it's a little slow this evening. There you go.
This is, I guess, an operational question, so John may want to take this.
Okay.
John, and it sort of goes back to what Councilor Garrett and Thomas were referring to. Not so much 2016. I understand your position on 2016. Early in the process, was there any thought of running 2017 under the old system as far as issuing the notices and then running a pro forma in the new system just to give you the variables to look at so you could work out the differences? You see what I'm saying? I mean, I've been through a lot of software conversions with companies, and they'll run dual images to make sure all the problems are worked out before you go with a live system. I'm not talking about going back to 16. I would say run 17 under the old software system, and then and also 17 under the new one, and you've captured that data digitally, and you can compare it, and you'd have a whole year to work out all the bugs, so to speak.
I know there were many comparisons done by Tyler Technologies because there were at times 3 different databases that were operating. So and remember 2 projects, right? The conversion project and the reval project. So the revaluation project was always done in Tyler and IS World, the software. And it was done by Steve. As I told you before, he managed that. So that system ran the revaluation, and it was never run in Oasis because it was incapable of running that type of revaluation. There were double checks between what Oasis had and what the conversion IS World had. Many times there were comparisons made as a part of the process of the conversion. But no, we did not run 17 values in Oasis.
Okay. That would just, I mean, it would have helped from a deadline. I mean, you're up against deadlines, as we all
Yes.
are in our businesses. And it just seems like that would have helped from a deadline issue, giving you more time had you used 17 in the old system, in the Oasis system, and then that, I guess, that train's left the station now, but I just didn't know what the thought process was early on, because it just seems like that would have helped ease the workload and the contentiousness of the issue and all of that.
From what I know about IS World and Oasis, we could not have done the revaluation and subsequent values from the revaluation in Oasis. That's not, that software was not the same software that was required to run the reval.
That's right, but you would have run just
Same
like
values?
Mr. Lomax said, you had your typical 17 activity that you had, or 16 activity that you had anyway. You would have just
Right.
run that under the old system.
With the old values.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And then run the new values under the new system, and that would, and perhaps sent the notices out under the old ones, and that gives you a whole year to work through the anomalies.
Yeah,
Just looking for solutions, that's all.
I understand.
Right. And two other quick questions that, I think one's probably for Randy, one's probably for you. Is you have the H accounts and you have other parcels that are just acreage. What about some of those parcels that the highest and best use may be a vacant lot? If you can't build on them, can't use them, floodplain, topography. How do you know that if you're really not, somebody's got to get out there and see those, right? I mean, in order to really know that. I'm just concerned that an additional lot is getting tagged with its highest and best use of an adjoining lot, but it doesn't have the.
If it's unimproved land,
Yeah, that's what I'm
it
talking
would have
about,
been valued as unimproved land. The H accounts.
Regardless of the topography or.
Well, I mean, there are adjustments that can be made for topography in IS World. There are adjustments that can be made for floodplain. There are adjustments that can be made for almost an unbelievable amount of things.
No,
But they're not all valued the same. So
Okay.
the 3 acres that's unimproved, not H account, just next door to a
Right.
house that's got
Right.
2 acres, is not improved, so it's valued as unimproved land.
Well, what if half of it is buildable and half of it's useless?
And we may or may not know that.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get to.
So the project that was purchased by the city of Columbus was for a desktop type of analysis that was done by Steve. That was the revaluation project. Boots on the ground, as we call it, what you're referring to.
It is.
Was not purchased by the city of Columbus. That would have been much more expensive to do. So that's the difference between the
So
project.
how do we fix it?
It's being fixed. You don't want to hear me say it, but it's being fixed
Through the appeal
process.
process.
And it is being fixed. It's being fixed parcel by parcel. And it's the only way we would know
Right.
that something needs to be fixed.
But you're relying on the taxpayer to question the valuation so you can go check it? What? Or is there
Sometimes, there have been areas that we've addressed because of appeals. Bellwood, that area we talked about
Yeah.
before. The first time we realized what had happened was because of an appeal. And so after a couple of those, and that's what I briefed this body on, when we see a reoccurrence of things happening, we're going to look at that area. And that's exactly what we did. So it's the appeal, literally, that triggers these things.
I understand, but it also does put a big burden on the taxpayers to get off deadlines and time and so forth. But and sometimes when you're working in tax, you want the numbers right to begin with. You don't want to have to be an appeal process to work it out. You want the numbers right from the start, and that's what's so frustrating to some of us. Just like when do we mail out notices, Mr. Lomax, do you know?
June 30th,
No, tax bills, I'm sorry.
October 1st.
October 1.
Okay.
October 1.
It doesn't look like, you're going to still have a lot of work left come October 1.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And so you're going to have a number of misstated tax notices going out.
And if you recall, we talked about the tax bill would go out at the 2016 level, tax bill, or 85% of the 17 level, whichever is less.
Now, go out or pay in order to keep the appeal alive?
If the appeal is ongoing, they will get a tax bill for
Right.
the lesser of those two values.
I understand that.
Okay.
My concern is how many tax bills are going to go out that are a long way from being resolved. As a lot of them will go out when you probably will not even have reviewed them yet. And you're running a 50% reduction, so you're going to have a lot of people who are going to be overbilled.
Well, out of the 50%,
And that's-
and correct me if I'm wrong, John, out of the 50% reduction, the tax assessor's office has already started sending notices to those property owners. Once the notices go out, they have 30 days in which to either continue the appeal or that value becomes final. If those are corrected before we send out the bills, I'm thinking there'll be some type of concession made there so that the bills will be right. But as it stands right now, the ones under appeal will get a tax bill, most likely based on their 2016 value, and then once the appeal is resolved, there'll have to be a reconciliation.
Wait a minute, who's going to get one on their 2016 value?
Anyone who has filed an appeal and their 2016 is lower.
That's right, but the ones you haven't gotten to yet, you don't know that.
Well,
We do.
if you filed an appeal, yeah, and I'm not sure I understand your
It's
question.
automatic, all 8,000 are going to get the
lower-
2016?
The lower of the
Yes.
two, yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
If you have filed an appeal,
Right.
your bill will be the lower of the 2017 tax or the 2016 tax. We're sure of that.
85% of the 2017 tax or the
Or.
2016 tax, unless it's been resolved.
Yes.
If it's
Right, I
been
understand
resolved,
that.
you're going to
Right,
get the tax bill.
So that's whichever's lower of the two?
Whichever's lower.
Okay. And so the tax commissioner will take care of that?
Yes.
Okay. And then if they're still not happy, the appeal process rolls on?
It does.
Now, you don't, the sending of the bill has nothing to do with the appeal process. The appeal
No, no,
process is going to continue on, yes.
No, yeah, that's right, it will. My concern is that the people who get those property tax bills,
Right.
because that's an official demand payment from the government, that it be as accurate as it can,
Yes.
and not be, in essence, overbilled and have to fight to get it reduced. If it can be reduced beforehand, that's by far and away the best answer. And I was just hoping that as many of those as possible get to that point.
I agree.
We do too.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. We've got, hold on just a moment here. We've got Counselor Huff.
My first question, do we have a performance contract with the vendor?
We have a contract, with Tyler, we have a contract with them, yes. I'm not sure what you mean by a performance contract.
In that it does everything we expect it for it to do, the software? Because it seems as though, I keep asking questions. They say there's no glitch, so that means there's some input that's wrong into the system because the software is just the software. So, again, I'm trying to figure out, performance-wise, what's our timeline as far as trying to get all of this worked out?
And Counselor Huff, I'm not sure what you're asking.
In the appeal process, as
Right.
far as the 8% above, we already have reached that point as far as appeals.
That is correct, we have.
And then the ones that have been looked at this point, resolved maybe should be the word I'm using, resolved at this point.
That's right.
If that part stays under 8%, is what you explained to me a
That's
few
right.
weeks ago, then the digest goes forward for 2000.
Well, remember now, the 8% is a dual threshold.
Right.
8% of the number of appeals and 8% of the value. We are under 8% of the value.
Right.
We would like to be under both of those, but right now we are over 8% on the number of appeals. But if your question is when is that determination made, it's made when the commissioner actually takes the digest to the state revenue commissioner, which will be sometime in September.
Okay. Next question, the freeze is applied to 2 acres of land, is that correct?
With a home on it, yes.
With the homeowner, okay. Anything in excess of 2 acres is valued, explain that to me
At
again.
its fair market value. The 2 acres is frozen when someone applies for homestead exemption. So the assumption in your question is they've applied for homestead exemption to get that 2 acres frozen. So it's the value of their home and the value of the 2 acres it hypothetically sits on that is frozen.
Okay,
Everything else is not.
okay. It was brought to my attention that there's probably, help me, correct me if I'm wrong, about 1,500 parcels out in the Midland, Umatilla area that basically have been having some issues. I guess out of that, it's roughly $1.3 million of the digest or so, somewhere in that range.
I've heard those numbers, not the money. I've heard the 1,500 and something thrown
Yeah.
around. I don't
Yeah.
know that number to be true as far as accurately representing
Yeah.
Midland or
But somewhere in
accounts
the
or-
1 point whatever million, it was
I don't know
brought to
that
my
to be
attention
true.
that it could be approximately 800,000 or so of that were having appeals. Do you know?
800,000.
Of the total property taxes in that area?
I
Well,
don't
under
have
appeal.
it by area. What I presented tonight is what I do have, as far as the number of appeals, the percentage of value in dispute, and the percentage of the numbers of parcels. I don't
Okay.
know by area.
And then also it was mentioned that as we are to go through the appraisal process 1/3 every year.
Well, there has been a lot of discussion about this 1/3 issue.
Yeah, but let me hold you right there.
Okay,
I'm saying basically I want to get this in and you can explain it all.
okay.
If the 1/3 was done, they said that it seems to be that it could have had in excess of 20 or 25 years since it was done appropriately in the Midland, Umatilla area. Could you address that?
I cannot address the 25-year issue. I can address the 1/3 every year. The State Revenue Department has issued regulations, and the regulations include a document called an Appraisal Procedure Manual. And it provides suggestions from the Department of Revenue as to what should occur. And the Appraisal Procedural Manual suggests and recommends that 1/3 of parcels be revalued or reassessed every year. I think there is a common, and John Williams can speak to this, a common misunderstanding as to what is involved in a reassessment or revaluation. That doesn't necessarily mean go out and physically inspect the property. John used the term earlier, a desktop revaluation. That may mean somebody in their office looking at the property card and just basically making a determination at their desk as opposed to physically inspecting the property. It is not a statutory requirement that 1/3 be revalued or reassessed every year, although it is encouraged by the Department of Revenue in their regulations.
Well, when they brought, excuse me, when they brought the idea of a new software package, it was mentioned to us that there would be a little white van riding around town taking pictures of property.
That's right.
And that you were looking for the houses that possibly had renovations and had not pulled a permit and things of these natures. We were looking to see if what we were going to catch from that, which properties had passed on as far as someone being deceased and moving on, and they were still paying old taxes, had not upgraded. And I'm just trying to understand in the process of the pictures, the photographs being taken, and inputting everything we have in the software, I'm just trying to figure out why we have so many problems with the software at this point.
And you know, I'm glad you brought that question because that reminded me, the Board of Tax Assessors has asked Tyler Technologies to have a representative that can be available to us at next council meeting. And if council would like, we will have a Tyler Technology representative here who will be more than happy, I hope, to answer those questions as to the actual process, the feet on the ground process of doing the appraisals, riding around in the van, taking the pictures, putting it into the system. And maybe that would be an appropriate time to ask that question because you get it right from the person who was doing the work.
Well, I've read quite a few articles in the last 2 weeks, and Tyler's had some problems. And they had been voted out of 3 counties I've read about in Florida. Miami, from the article I read, has put them on a short lease going toward, I guess, the end of this year, first part of next year. There's probably 9 or 10 or so of the counties, of the 159 counties in Georgia, that are working with them at this point. We don't have any power at this point as a city council, but the Atlanta City Council had power, and they turned their 2017 piece back to the 2016 rates about a week or 2 ago, based on increases going up too fast. I'm just frustrated at this point because I have people in my district that didn't understand the property was devalued. Taxes stayed the same. They increased a little bit, so they didn't appeal. They should have, but they didn't appeal. They thought they were fighting the government, so why worry about it? For the ones that have bought rental property to better the communities, to clean up the blight, now the taxes are going up on them, and if they have these taxes to stay where they are right now, and they pass them on to their tenants, it's probably going to at least double the rent. And if these homes become empty at this point, then we're back to square one. It creates blight again in the neighborhood. And I just don't get why it's so difficult to sit back and look at. I've looked at several software packages lately that we've had problems with. And in my little time on this earth, software is software. You look at software for what it is that you're doing and what your expertise is. You input the information. If you input the wrong information, you get the wrong answers out. You get the wrong results. And I think that was why Council was asking to kind of slow things down, to see if we could input information however we needed to. Mr. Williams mentioned that there was an example where they entered a 0 in the wrong location and it gave the wrong results. There has to be more of those. It's just too many examples at this point of people complaining. Our phones are ringing off the hook. I left town to take my son to college. I'm getting phone calls about property taxes. I'm due to a parent meeting in 15 minutes, and I'm having to answer property tax questions. And they want to know, why is it that you represent us and you don't have any power? I say, well, our system, the Board of Tax Assessors, has all the power. And it goes up to the Revenue Commissioner and to the state. But we're sitting here to take all the heat, all the questions, and, you know, no disrespect to the chair and the board, but we requested the board to be here because we have cameras on. Their board meetings have no cameras. The public doesn't get a chance to hear what's really going on. And we wanted to have an open discussion so that the public would know that we were trying to get our questions answered based on the phone calls that we're receiving. So at this point, I'm just trying to figure out, as we go forward, and some people get stuck, and I use that, really mean that. Some people are going to get stuck in this situation, and they're going to get hit with some taxes. And there are people who own property out in Midland that have had it for years, and they're trying to hold on to it, and they feel like developers are coming after them to try to get their property. That's why the taxes are going up. And it's not a good look for us. It's not a good look for anybody associated with this government at this point. Those of us up here take it very seriously. We have over 200,000 people. There are 8 of us. For the ones visiting, there are 8 of us that represent 8 districts. There are 2 at-large councilors here, and we represent all of the people. And we all are taking the heat for something we can't correct. So I don't have all of the right questions and the right answers all the time, but I know that the digest was working very well up until this year. For whatever reason, putting in a new software package has upset the apple cart. And it appears, without pointing fingers, the public feels that there are games being played with the software system to get the taxes up.
Well, I got several points I guess I need to address. First of all, I am the attorney for the Board of Tax Assessors. They are my client. I represent them. I do not represent Tyler Technologies. Although, if council requests, we will do everything we can to have one or more representatives from Tyler Technologies here next week to answer questions. Tyler Technologies has had a long-standing relationship with the city. We did not, the Board of Tax Assessors did not contract with Tyler Technologies. It was the City of Columbus. Tyler Technologies did not provide software just to the Board of Tax Assessors. It provided it to several city departments. So, although I'm happy to take the heat for Tyler Technologies, I really can't speak for them, and I would prefer to let one of their representatives address any concerns you may have about their performance and any problems they may be having in other locales. I just don't feel comfortable doing that. Now, as for someone who may get, and I think you used the word stuck, simply because the appeal period is over does not shut the door on the Board of Tax Assessors addressing any mistakes or errors. There is a procedure where if someone has a mistake, for example, their homestead was inadvertently removed, they can still contact us, bring that to our attention, and the board will correct that. Even if it happens after they pay their tax, they can still do that, and there's a refund procedure in the code. And I think the statute of limitations is 3 years on that. So it's not like on August 14, that was like doomsday, or an eclipse day for practical purposes, but it's simply the closing of the appeal. If there's an error, if we've missed a characteristic like Councilor Garrett was talking about, bring it to our attention. If it's an error, it will be fixed, and the statute allows that to happen.
Okay. If a person gets the higher taxes this year, are they able to appeal next year?
If they get what?
Higher taxes this year, are they able to appeal next year?
Yes, every year you have the right to appeal.
Okay.
They'll get a notice again next year, and they can appeal.
Okay. Do you all have a number of the properties that were in the $20,000, $25,000 range that jumped up to $100,000+?
We don't have it with us tonight. We can get that list if you'd like.
Okay.
It's not something we have with us tonight that would show that.
Does Mr. Williams have just a ballpark figure or something?
Got more numbers than I care to think about. But what I did do is, and what you mentioned is a property that doubled in value. I think is your example. It
some double, some triple. Yeah,
so
right.
What we've heard in the past is from Councilor Garrett and others is these 1,000% increases. And so I went back and looked at those. I've looked at every one of them. I can find my summary sheet. I can talk about it. There were 395 properties that increased 1,000% or more. 395 out of 69,540 real properties. That's 0.57%. It's basically 1/2 of 1% that went up 1,000% or more. 1,000% is a tenfold increase.
Right.
So a $500 value that went up 1,000% is $55,000. I'm sorry, $5,500.
Mm-hmm.
That's an example. Here we go. And I'll be glad to forward this to you. It's a lot of information. Of the 395 properties that went up, so less than 0.6% of the properties in this county went up 1,000% or more, tenfold. 2 of those were over 35,000, and there were both bond accounts that went from unimproved to improved. They won't be appealed. 1 of those was above 32,000. The remainder, the 392 properties, were below 34,000. 62 of those had 2016 values less than $10,000. So a tenfold increase would be $110,000, from 10 to 110. 329 of those had 2016 values less than $10,000. 80 of those had 2016 values less than $1,000. And 44 of them had less than a $500 value in 2016. I've looked at many, and I couldn't begin to give you examples, but I can tell you one, because there are property owners who will file an appeal and be what I call be honest with what they think the property's worth, as opposed to just putting last year's value on it, which there are lots of those. And this particular property was one of the 1,000% increases. Her value, her indicated value on our appeal form was a 500% increase over what we had on it. And when I worked her appeal, I was very close to what she had indicated her value to be. It wasn't exactly, but it was closer to 500% than 1,000. But that's an example of a property in this town, and there are many that should have gone up. There are 1,000%, there are 3,000% or more increases that should have gone up. Let me give you some examples. I looked at 4 of them, and Steve from Tyler put these together for me to look at on an Excel spreadsheet like we've talked about doing. 4 of them had sales in 2016 where we had a $320 value, or I think 12,000 is another repetitive number we saw on unimproved land that had sales on it. And the sale price in 16 was higher than what we put on it that was 1,000% or more increase. So some of those were vacant sale lots that put improvements on it, and the value went up because of the improvement. 11 of them were to the new construction. 4 of them actually had transfers. They weren't new construction, but they were sold from one party to another. And that sale price was higher than our 1,000% or more increase that we put on it. So I only give you those limited examples, and I've got more statistics that I don't want to bore anybody with, and I will email them to you if you ask me to.
Please do.
There are reasons for there to be 1,000% increase or more, and it is legitimate. And we all hear of these 1,000% or more increases around the county. There are 395 of them, and many of them are appropriate.
One in particular was the gentleman that was interviewed after standing in line on the 14th. And he's a homeowner, and he said his property is valued at $125,000 or so. And he said he would gladly sell it to anyone for $100 that day. So my question was based on that and others that I've spoken with.
Yes, sir.
That they've been staying there for years. And all of a sudden, as a homeowner, you get ready to file your property taxes, you have homestead and everything, and you're looking at a house going from $20,000, $25,000 to $100,000 in value, and none of us would pay that for a house in that neighborhood.
Well, it sounds like he filed an appeal.
He did.
And I'm glad he did.
That's why he was here.
And we will work that appeal, and if he's right, it will come down. No doubt. I know
it's hard to see that he could be wrong, because I've been in my car lately riding around trying to get an idea of where the problems are. And somewhere on some of the streets, I don't see how the houses could be worth more than $20,000 to $30,000. You know, I'm not the expert, but I just don't see it.
And there are properties in town worth less than that.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
We have, let's see, we have I guess it's Counselor Garrett, I'm sorry.
Just a couple of follow-up questions, and you may have to get back with me on these, Mr. Williams.
Okay.
Based off what we talked about, the houses that were under the freeze and then the properties that had the taxes lowered, I'm coming up with 10,593 that got lowered that were not under the freeze. Does that sound about right?
I haven't done the math, but those 23,086 minus 12,493, if that's the number.
If you've got it, and you may have to run this for me, but if you could just let me know how many of the 10,593 parcels that were reduced and had a reduction greater than 10% or 20%? Alan, do you have that number available?
Non-homesteaded properties that were adjusted more than 10 or 20%, I don't have that number.
Okay, if I could get that. And then another thing, as far as the recommended for reduction, I mean, from some of these were pretty massive increases, so a reduction might be still a 90% tax increase if they had 100%. If you could let me know, and you may not have this number in front of you as well, but I'd like to know how many people have actually accepted the reduction. And I'm not sure how long they have to accept that, but I'd like to know that. And then I also, and you may have this in front of you, how many properties went up 100% or more in taxes?
30, and well, again, and this is thrown about a bunch, and I'd like to stick with assessments.
Sure, assessments.
Assessments. 3907 went up 100% or more. Now, I've got it broken down.
Sorry, say that again, Mr. Reed.
I was about to say, I've got it broken down in strata. So the number I have out beside 100% is 3907, but that doesn't include 200%, 300%,
Sure.
those other stratas. That's basically 8%.
Okay. Well, I guess the last thing, and this is kind of following up on what Councilor Thomas had to say, I think we all understand the resolution was not perfect, and this isn't really to you, it's more to the board. But it was to start a conversation. That's why we did want the board to have some discussion, and we would have welcomed feedback and suggestions on that to achieve what our goal was, which was to slow this process down and allow more time to evaluate, what you can perceive as anomalies or errors, however you want to call it. Whether that resolution's been rejected or not, if the board has some sort of ideas of a solution, we'd love to hear them. Something that can help our citizens other than just, because the appeal deadline's passed, other than just file your appeal. But we would welcome suggestions. We want to work with the board. And if y'all have some sort of idea for helping our citizens, we'd certainly welcome it.
I'll let the board speak for themselves. I'm not a board member, as you know. I do work for Ms. Middleton, who is employed by the board. So in a roundabout way, I work for them, but I am certainly not a board member.
Sure.
And I've got non-homesteaded properties that increase 20, 30% or more, is one of your questions.
Mm-hmm.
There are also properties that increased that were homesteaded. I can get that number to you as well. And believe it or not, there are properties that are homesteaded that increased, and people are appealing those, just like I would imagine.
Sure.
The other end, there are people that are appealing those, even though they have a homesteaded value, and it went down, they want it to go down more.
Yeah.
So there's all kinds of different homeowners with all types of different rationale for filing an appeal. But I want to answer any questions you give me.
Sure.
Hopefully, anybody that's asked me questions, I've responded in a timely manner. That's my goal. But was there another question that I did not write down that you wanted to know?
I think you've got them all, but
okay.
As far as the reductions, if you could maybe give me, you were kind of talking about strata going up from 100%, but if I could get the strata going down to, maybe 25%, in brackets of 5.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, we have Counselor Huff.
One last question.
Yes, sir.
On the ones that went down in value, is there any particulars that caused that?
Any particulars that caused them to go down in value?
The taxes stayed the same, but the property value went down?
The property value went down for the same reason it might have gone up, and that's our analysis. The analysis that Tyler Technologies did on the sales in the area indicated that the value was worth less than what we had on it. Same opposite would be true.
Would the taxes not have gone down with it?
Again, and I don't want to, I don't deal with taxes. So the tax commissioner deals with those. If there's a homesteaded value, if it's locked in with a homestead, those estimated taxes, which are on our notice of assessment, should not have changed very much. There was a millage rate change, as you know, but homesteaded property is frozen for assessment purposes. So if there's no change, shouldn't have changed.
The tax stayed basically the same, but the value of the house went down.
It still would. It works both ways. Yes, sir.
This is, excuse me, John.
I understand the system that's in place causes it to work that way. I understand what you're saying.
It's not the system, it's the local ordinance that we have here in Muskogee County on the homestead. The homestead is frozen from going up and going down. So back in 2009, when we had, reductions in value throughout the county, throughout the state, throughout the nation, people wanted to know, could they, reject or disclaim their homestead, and the law does not allow for that. So it's frozen. So even though our value may have gone down, your taxes would stay approximately the same, depending upon any millage rate changes.
Okay, so you are saying under the homestead and tax freeze, none of those properties went up in taxes?
The taxes would not have changed because the value that is being assessed for tax purposes is frozen. That is correct.
Okay. I understand the first one, you're saying that it could go down in value, taxes stay the same.
It goes up in value, taxes stay the same.
But under all of the 69,000 plus parcels of homeowners included in there, everybody that was a homesteader person with the tax freeze, the taxes didn't move.
If you have a homestead in Muskogee County, your taxes should not change other than for changes in the millage rate.
Okay.
That is correct.
All right, thank you.
All right, we have Counselor Allen.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to hear from Mr. Randolph and Mr. Moorfield. They're here, they made the attempt to come, and I'd like to have them address council, whatever comments they'd like to say.
Okay. Do you have a question that you want to talk to?
Well, I think it would be good for them to acknowledge Councilor Garrett's question.
Thank you for allowing us to be here. My name is Chester Randolph, and I'm the chair of the Tax Assessor Board. And there's a lot that I would say, but I won't. It just seemed like the City Council do not have faith that the tax assessor would do a good job, or do the right job, and do the job that we've been sworn in to do. We are all private citizens. We have the same concern that you have. We live here in Muskogee County. I've been here 27 years. Matt was born here and raised here. And just to be beat up without asking a question, and the question that you guys asked us, let's work together, came after you beat us up. That's why the members are not here. They don't want to stand here and get beat up by City Council. Okay? We're doing the best job that we can do. We are a part-time board. We're not full-time. And yet this council, some of these council members have gone out and just have to encourage people to beat us up, put our phone numbers out there, put our emails out there, and just bombard us on stuff that we don't need to be bombarded with. You had my deputy chief here 3 weeks ago for 6 hours asking the same question. Each one of you got him asked the same questions over and over again. I'm saying that's dumb. He's answered the question, we got the facts, and yeah, there might be some mistakes are made on all sides. We might make the right decision every time. We made the one we thought was the right one. But why beat us up for something that we feel we done right by the law? And why people do not want to follow the law, I don't understand it. Why a councilman said, make a decision, get on this council up here and says, let's do this, and somebody asked, I think it was the mayor asked, what's the consequences? And he says, I don't care. Well, I am a private citizen, and I am on the tax assessor board, and I do care. All the folks on our assessor board care. We care what goes on. But we're not going to come here and get beat up by you guys. That's not going to happen. That is not going to happen. That's why they're not here, because they see what goes on. Okay? You want to point fingers, to point finger at me, we made a mistake, we're going to correct it, but there's a process for that. As the citizens do not want to follow that process, my hands are tied. Okay? Now, we keep talking about taxes. I heard it so many times. We do not do taxes. We assess value of properties. And we're going to, there have been some that's not right. We're going to correct those. We have corrected a ton of them already. And my mentor is, we're not going to get anything go out until it goes out correct and right. Okay? With that being said, there are some properties that we found that had, and we knew this going into this evaluation because there was no manpower in place. Okay? There was not enough money given to the tax assessor board over the many, many years before I got on the board. And so there was a lot of things that was missed, and there was a lot of properties that was missed in evaluation. We found a lot of properties that had not been assessed properly over the years. Okay? We knew this evaluation would catch those ones that had been things that had been added on and remodeled, and in addition, we knew those things would be caught too. We got those. We got all of that. Okay? Yes, there will be some increase in value. I'm not sure how much right now, but the value will go up. Now, with that being said, the council right here has the ability to control that. When we don't control that, we're going to put a value on the floor that's going to be right, it's going to be equitable, and it's going to be fair. You set the millage rate. You set the tax rate, not us. Please understand that. So if the taxes are too high, you have the ability to change that by changing the millage rate. Okay? We don't do that. We don't control taxes, just the value of properties. That's all we do. And we think we're doing it in a fair and an equitable manner. For those who do not believe that, there's a process for that. If you get mad, you don't want to do that, I can't help that. I'm following the state law. Okay? I've never been to jail, never going to jail. I'm going to do what's right. Okay? And I don't want to take questions, because I don't take heat too good, like some politicians. I'm not a politician, never been one, don't want to be one. But if you want to sit down and have a conversation with me, I'd be glad to have a conversation with you. If you want to come to our council meeting, I'd be glad for you to do that. I'm not going to sit here and get beat up, though. Not going to do that. If you want to email me some questions, I'd be glad to respond to you.
Mr. Randolph.
And I do apologize for getting back with you so late. I went out of town to visit my grandson and play some golf.
Mr. Randolph.
Yes, sir.
I sense a little frustration.
Yes, it
Correct me
is.
if I'm wrong. Okay. You're feeling the same thing we're feeling. Because of the process, because of the Tyler technology system that was in place, because of the lack of communication, because of the deadlines being missed, we caught the heat from the public.
Okay.
And that's why we're asking you to be here. That's why we're asking Mr. Williams to be here. We wanted answers to questions because we didn't have there was no communication. We did not know what to tell the public. We were not informed. If I recall right, when we were presented with the Tyler technology process, there were going to be on-site assessments of properties with iPads. City employees would be riding around, or whoever we contracted with would be riding around with iPads and taking pictures of property. That's how the process would be working. Over a period of time, we would be able to capture that instead of somebody having to go out and get out of the car and walk around and all that stuff, make appointments. There would be drive-by site. And I think Mr. Williams said that y'all did 5,000 of those this year. Mm-hmm. That's the way it was presented to council, was that there wouldn't be this online personal discretion over whether the property ought to go up or not. There would be someone actually going out to the property, which is not happening. And a lot of the variables in the system were not put in correctly. So that's why you've got all these problems. That's why people are mad. That's why they're calling us. And that's why we're standing here asking whoever you send over here the question so that we have the ability to talk to people.
Well,
now several of us have attended homeowner group meetings. And we've literally had our head handed to us because people are upset. There was a guy in tears who owned 200 rental properties, and he thought he was going to lose everything because there was no communication. And when you don't communicate with us, you can get as frustrated as you want to, but when you don't communicate with us, there's a problem.
Okay.
And we bought this system in 2014. We had maybe 2 or 3 updates over that period of time. And in June of 13, you came to this council, you in general, and you told us, we got a problem. We're not going to meet the June 30th deadline. And that's the first we heard of anything.
Okay.
So I want to echo what my counterpart said. We need communication. And I'm not, my voice is raised a little bit, but I'm not mad with you. I'm frustrated with the whole process. Mentality Technologies, I've heard a lot of bad things about them over a period of time. I know they probably have done some good things. It's not just in property taxes, but it's in a wide variety of areas with city and county governments. It's including court assessments and jail time and all these different things, working with sheriff departments. I mean, there are many, many problems. And I think if the research had been done properly on who to hire, we might have a better system in place.
Right. Well, I'm not going to debate some of the things you said I don't agree with, but I'm not going to debate them here with you.
Well, I'll be glad. I'll go to lunch with you. I'll buy you lunch and sit down and talk through it.
Whatever. But I'm not going to debate them here. You said several things that I do not agree with, but I'm not going to debate them on this floor right here tonight. Okay?
That's fine.
And
I respect that.
And I think the Tyler technology works. I really do. Okay? And you can't, when you make some decision to do some things, and they're 3 years old, to me, it's almost nil and void to try to have a conversation about that piece over there. Whether it was good, bad, or mistake, that's done. I can't go back and fix that one from 3 years ago. Yeah, but what do we do going forward? And I really have not seen the leadership in this city council when they go to these forums, because it's almost like my phone blow up the next day, and my email blow up the next day. So I don't know what's going on or what's being said when folks go to forums, because my folks are being blown up all over. They won't even answer their phones now.
But if we had the communication, we could talk about the forums. If you'd attended the forums, which you were invited to, and you chose not to.
I'm not going to go to a beat-up session.
Well, but you're complaining about the forum when you were not there. You don't know what was said.
All right, that's true.
Okay.
All right.
Well, Mr. Moorfield, would you like to say something?
My name's Matt Moorfield. I'm a real estate appraiser here in Columbus, Georgia. I'm the youngest or most newly appointed member for the board, and we came into this, and what I do is value, and all I can say is I do the best I can at it. I've got 12 years of experience. I do residential and commercial, and I'm standing by this system, and I think if we're going to fix and do everything we can to go forward. And I think going back would be anti-progressive. That's a word. And everything Chester said I agree with, and I support it, and that's all I can say from my standpoint, is that I know value, and that's what I'm going to do.
So you used the word mistakes. You're going to correct the mistakes.
So that's the term that I use right now. I didn't mean mistake, but whatever. We're obviously doing a 69,500 parcel automation valuation method. There are some issues that may come up that need to be addressed. And that's something that we're working on. We're trying to get all the kinks, whatever the word you want to use, we're trying to fix these problems or issues.
Well, you're the first person that's been honest. At least you said there's something wrong and we need to fix it. And other people have called it anomalies, which...
I'm not saying it's I'm doing value. And if we see something, we're going to get my best experience on value. That's what I'm doing as a member of the board.
I think John Williams, excuse me.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr.
John Williams has been
here.
pretty consistent with his line that if we find a group of properties that have an error or a mistake or an anomaly, just in my southern lingo, it just ain't right, we're going to do what we can to fix it. There's no doubt about that. He's talked about the Bellwood subdivision, Midland area. If there are errors, if there are floodplains on lots that we haven't noted, if the lots are unbuildable and we haven't noted, those are errors. We're going to do what we can to fix that. Absolutely.
Mr. Lomax, I agree with you. You should.
Yeah, absolutely.
Today is the first day you or anyone else has said anything other than the term anomaly. Well, we're going to fix it. If there's a mistake, if there's something wrong, we're going to fix it. And I appreciate that. I thank you for saying that publicly.
We have avoided using the word mistake. We have tried our best purposely to avoid that. But as I told you the last time,
it's not healthy in all this discussion for you to avoid that?
Well,
I mean, if we got something that we need to fix, then we need to admit it's been a problem getting it implemented, and we're going to head down the road, and we're going to do a better problem.
But I don't want to leave the impression that there's a problem or a mistake with the system. There are problems or mistakes with individual parcels, and we are going to fix those. If someone has a floodplain on a lot and we didn't catch that, we're going to address it. If there are properties that are unusable, but we didn't know that, we're going to correct it.
One of the emails I received, a gentleman explained it perfectly. This is basically an opt-out situation. We're forcing, as Councilor Baker said earlier, we're forcing the homeowner to opt out on an increase in their property tax. And I'm glad Councilor Garrett asked for the evaluations. I mean, we think about gas prices. If a gas station goes up a nickel, we start looking for another station to go buy from. An increase in a property tax over 20%, over 10% should be appealed, in my opinion. I mean, 1,000% is ridiculous. Councilor Baker was spot on when he said that we should have run this in 16 valuations in order. You say you couldn't do it, but I know that the system could be done. You could have entered in, you could have spent the time to enter it in. If this system had been implemented in any other corporation, everybody involved would have been terminated.
And I think next
That's
week,
just the way
if we
it
have a
works.
title.
You don't implement a system until it's right.
And if we can have a title technology representative come next week, I think that'd be a perfect question to ask them and request that they explain to you the comparisons that they ran with the systems.
Well, so you're going to have them here the next time we meet?
We have requested them, and them being as many representatives as they want to have, if we can get on the agenda for next week, we will have them here. I'm being a little bit evasive because I can't speak for Title Technologies. I can ask them to be here, the request has been made, and we'll do what we can, but I can't make them show up.
Well, I would appreciate them being here. I think others would too.
All right. We'll do what we
Thank
can.
you, Mayor.
All right, let's see, we've got Councilor Davis.
I wasn't going to say anything, but I think I got a little bit of the spirit now. Mr. Williams, Mr. Lomax, were y'all shocked or surprised by the over 12% percentage of appeals?
Yes.
I think you were, because
I
remember
can only
back.
speak for me.
Well, and I think you were, because I remember back the very conversation, Mr. Williams, you were having with Councilor Henderson, that you'd be shocked if it wasn't over a certain amount. Well, it's well over that amount. So, that in itself speaks volumes to the word I've used over and over, unprecedented. When we sent the resolution to you guys, we sent it to you to ask as a form, a way that this council could intervene and maybe come up with a solution, because we understand the problem of the quagmire of an issue. That's all we could do. We've tried every avenue we can. And Mr. Fay, thank you, Mr. City Attorney, for reaching out to other representatives, esteemed representatives of the state. You were right in your determination and your counsel to us. Really, all we could do is ask you guys a resolution. And the resolution wasn't designed, now your play on words kind of got to me a little bit. It wasn't designed to address those issues. It was a request. And it went through and it stated the reasoning behind it. We are concerned about the citizens of Columbus and where they're at now. This is not over, okay? When, we're having these meetings and we're going over a lot of stuff that someone said every meeting that we've been going over, yeah, but it's still not over yet. There's going to be other issues that surface along the way throughout the year. And, it was said, I'm going to show some leadership. I'm going to show some leadership here. I'm going to apologize to the citizens of Columbus for where we're at today. Nobody has done that to this point. Nobody. Whether it's arrogance, whether it's pride, whether it's just a lack of wanting to admit what really happened, nobody has apologized to the citizens of Columbus. And my only regret if I could go back and do it all over again, I would have never approved that software upgrade and reevaluation. And through that whole process, I never thought it was going to be a county-wide evaluation. Because we've been asking questions through these tax allocation district matters and all. We've thought all this stuff has been up to date to this period. And I've asked you, we are under the Department of Revenue guidelines that you should be up to date, and up to date annually and every 3 years. So my only regret is that I did approve that request. If I would have known where we were today, if I would have known what's happening today, I would have said, no way. There's got to be a better way. Somebody's going to have to give me some assurances. Somebody has to give me some confidence that we're going to be able to work through all this stuff, because I would not put the citizens of Columbus through that. But I can't go back. I can't go back, neither can you, nobody else. And we're at where we're at today, and we're trying to work through this. You guys came here, you gave us your answer to the resolution. You gave us your reason and your logic behind it, okay? The clock's been ticking. The clock's pretty much ran out. Atlanta seemed to do it. Atlanta seemed to work through it, you know, for whatever reason. But, you know, I think everybody's kind of shocked and surprised at the number of appeals and where we're at today, and I think there'll be more. And like you said, this is not the end of it. People are still going to have, they're just going to have a lot of issues to deal with, and I, you know, and include myself. I don't know where this is going, but it's already cost me a lot of money to deal with it, personally. I'm part of it too. I mean, I'm a citizen of Columbus. I'm having to deal with it too. So, you know, I think that the main thing here, and I said it before, Mr. Williams agreed with me, I think we're both on the same page. I mean, for where we go now, we just got to get it right. Councilor Allen is dead right. If this would ever happen in the corporate world, I don't think anybody have jobs today. That's the truth of it. But it's government. But we can't go back and change it. The only thing we can do is try to work, get it all resolved, straighten it out, find the best solution possible. Let's keep moving. We're going to have to keep addressing these issues along the way. And hopefully, you know, the goal would be to reinstill the confidence in the citizens of Columbus. That's where we need to go. That's where we need to get. And I hope we can all do that together, and that we can communicate from here on out and try to do that. The communication, we should have had that long time before. Maybe we could have avoided a lot of this, but it is where it is, and you know, again, I'm a council representative, but I'm a citizen of Columbus. I'm in the middle of it too, like everybody else. So I do apologize that we're at where we're at today, and hopefully this is all going to turn into a positive, somehow, some way.
I hope so too.
All right, we have Councilor Thomas.
I want to address a couple of the things that Chairman Randolph said. For the last 3 or 4 meetings, we have been discussing this for hours. We are now into hour and a half tonight. But I think that we have done that because of the response that our citizens have given to us, have brought to us, that this is a concern. I don't recall any other issue, quite frankly, that we've, other than our yearly budget, but any other issue of this nature that we've spent this amount of time on. I think that there were several things that happened that I don't understand, and I would like to understand. When Councilor Baker was talking about running running the software to see where the anomalies were, the thing that I thought of was the tax assessment form that I saw from a property in Bellwood that in 2016, the fair market value was $12,000, and in 2017, the fair market value was $158,000. And it would seem to me that if we had done what Councilor Baker had suggested and run this a time or two, that when that popped up, it would have also popped up a red flag. And so the issues about Bellwood, for example, could have been taken care of before those ever went out. And that taxpayer, the place that I saw that notice was at the tax assessor's office. That taxpayer would not have had to come to the tax assessor's office because it would have been taken care of. And I think that those red flags are what we are hearing about, and we are hearing about it. I can't go anywhere without somebody talking to me about the tax situation, and perhaps you are the same way. But I want to say to you and to anybody else that happens to be listening that I don't think this council and these individual counselors are playing politics with this issue. I think we want the same thing that the Board of Tax Assessors wants, and that is a fair and accurate tax digest. And once we can get that, then hopefully we can move on. I think it's going to take us a long time. I think that some of the motives that have been ascribed to us and to you, and that we're doing this because the thaw didn't work, and we're doing this because people want to buy the property, and we're doing this because it's lining our pockets, all of those kinds of things that are not true, will still be there in the minds of some of our folks. But I really and honestly believe, Mr. Randolph, that the reason that these meetings have gone on sometime ad nauseum is because of the concern that the counselors have for the procedure and making sure that it's accurate. That's our goal. And I appreciate your coming tonight. I appreciate Mr. Moorfield being here. And I particularly appreciate Mr. Williams again and the knowledge and information that he has brought to this process. Thank you for being here.
Okay, we have Councilor Henderson.
Thank you, Mayor. I promise this is a very quick question. Mr. Williams, just for my own curiosity, obviously I share some of my fellow councilors' concerns about how we got here. My immediate concern, though, is the same as yours, as you stated, and as your chairman so eloquently put it, is to get this right going forward and for this year. But how difficult would it be for you to get me for the last 10 years the number of appeals and the number of re-evaluations done for those years? If you can't do 10, I'd appreciate 5. I just thought 10 would at least get us back through the beginning of the recession.
I don't know.
Okay.
I will research that and try to get as many years back as we can. How many appeals?
Yeah, I'm trying to find a benchmark. I know this has been a pretty enormous amount.
Number of appeals.
I'm just trying to see historically what's the average. What have we been?
The last county-wide revaluation was done in the 80s.
Okay. It would be helpful to include that 1 year too.
And that county-wide revaluation is not a requirement of the law every 3 years. And Mr. Lomax touched on it. I've got the law here. If I could just read it, it's real short. 560-11-10.09, parenthesis 2, parenthesis D, number 4, parenthesis III. It's from the Appraiser Procedure Manual. And it talks about field review frequency. This is the only place I found it in the law. All real parcels should be physically reviewed at least once every 3 years to ascertain that property information records are current. Doesn't say reassessed, because we assess property every year. The Board of Assessors puts an assessed value on property every year. So what we've done is a countywide revaluation, and I'm sure somebody misspoke, because I thought I heard someone say, we didn't know it was going to be a countywide revaluation. And I know I've stood here and briefed that it's going to be a countywide revaluation. I know that in May of 16, over 69,000 mailers were sent to property owners that said, and I quote, Muskogee County has contracted with Tyler Technologies, Inc., appraisal services to conduct a complete reappraisal of all properties in Muskogee County for 2017. Now, we all got one of those. If you own a piece of property, you got one for every piece of property you own. How could you not know that? I've briefed you. I've personally told you it was a countywide revaluation or a countywide reassessment.
And I appreciate that information, though it is not relevant to my question.
It is not, and I apologize. I went
What
off on
I'm
a tangent.
asking for is to try to get the
Number of
appeals. Yes, sir. I'm just trying to, I just would like to see a benchmark. What is, I don't know that there is a normal, but what's
Per
a
year.
normal expected number of appeals in
Last
a
10
given year?
years.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
And that reval, if we could get that
Yeah,
year.
if you can get that, that'd be great. That'd be great to be able to compare it to what we're going through right now. And that is for no other reason than just to try to be able to see some kind of benchmark, see what we've been expecting year to year, and if we tripled it, how close it is to what we've got this year.
And I apologize for going off.
No,
that
that's
tangent.
okay. You were about to lose me. I just wanted to.
Yeah, no, I'm with you.
No, thank you.
All right, it looks like we're finished with this discussion, as others have said, but thank you so very much, John, and Chairman Randolph, and Mr. Moorfield, and Betty, of course, and Mr. Lomax for being here. The frustrations have obviously been vented on both sides. I think that's a good thing. I just want to say what maybe's been alluded to, but make sure we appreciate your time. We appreciate you working with us to try to find some of these solutions, and you have made some adjustments, lengthening the times and putting more resources on it, and various other things too. Going back to check some of these things, you could proactively make adjustments, and it's great to hear you say you're going to continue to make those adjustments as you find them. And I think one of the points that I know I have to clear up all the time, emails and phone calls and the media reporting, and you all touched on it tonight, and that is this board has one objective, and that is to get an accurate and fair digest, period. And it was the state that long ago separated it from the municipality, the local governing authority, for the purpose that it would not be influenced by politics or whatever else, as Counselor Thomas said. And so I think that's most certainly not our objective. Our objective is to make sure we have a fair and accurate tax digest. And to the volunteers, or the private citizens, I should say, we really do appreciate you and your expertise. People don't just fall onto this board. You have to have a very high level of expertise. You do work directly for the Revenue Commissioner, and they set a very high bar of your training and so forth. And so despite all the listed things that we want you to look into and that we feel we wish had been done another way or this way, we really do appreciate the time and tremendous effort that you've put into this. Let's just keep on until we work through it, and the citizens also share your belief and our belief that we have a fair and accurate tax digest. So
Thank you, Mayor.
very
I'll pass it along to our staff.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Mr. City Manager?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have a business meeting / work session on the 29th.
Mm-hmm.
And so before they leave, I'd like for them to be clear from this council what you would expect from them on the business meeting / work session agenda on the 29th. You want them to come back and do an update? You want, what is it so that it's clear before they leave and they can prepare for it?
Councilor Allen.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, number one, Mr. City Manager, appreciate you bringing it up, because if it fits the schedule of Tyler Technologies that people come in that Mr. Lomax mentioned, then we could offer several dates. We could begin with the 29th and go forward. Give them some few dates to have somebody come in and talk to us. What I would prefer as a counselor, I would like to continue to have someone come in and offer the communication dialogue that we've been talking about for several weeks now. And that is to have continuous updates. I know Mr. Williams is nice enough to send out emails and give us, a snapshot, but I'd like somebody to stand here and tell us where we are. I think it's good for us to hear. It gives us the information that we can pass on to those that when we get questions, and it's good for it to go out over the air so that people can hear what's going on and what adjustments are being made and that we are working through. I know Mr. Randolph's frustrated. We're all frustrated. But we've got to show that we're taking a step to get the system right and make corrections. If it's going to work, the communication is what it's going to take.
Mr. Williams will be more than happy to continue to come to the meetings until the digest is submitted.
I think that's what the city manager was asking for. He wants to know what council wants him to do, wants you to do.
We're more than willing,
sure.
Okay. Now, but did we resolve the issue of Tyler Technologies? Should we have reps here next week?
Well, if you can get them here
Okay.
next week, yes. If they can't be here next week, then provide a date based on second Tuesday, fourth Tuesday council meetings.
Right.
9 o'clock on second Tuesday, 5:30 on fourth Tuesday, when they can attend one of the
We will
business.
endeavor to have them here next week.
So that's an update from Mr. Williams at the very least, and hopefully we'll have Tyler Technology folks here as well.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. We have Councilor Davis.
And I think at some point, whether it's at this meeting or some point, I think that this body would like to see a strategic plan as to how the Board of Tax Assessors, the Tax Assessor's Office, is going to meet the Department of Revenue requirements here on out with assessments and valuations. I think the citizens want to know, is this going to happen again? Or what are we going to do from here on out? How are we going to keep it current? You know, I know what Harris County does. I know what other counties do to lighten if you say you're overloaded and you're limited on manpower and resources or so. You know, maybe you just split it up here and there and work on it annually, segments. You don't have to do it all in 1 year. But I'd like to know what the plan is. I think we owe it to the citizens to know what the strategic plan is from here on out, now that this system's been turned on.
Okay.
Yeah, and along that same lines, Mr. Lomax, something about what we're doing every year.
Right.
And also, I mean, is one of the reasons the results were so shocking because it was 35 years since our last countywide reassessment. I mean, what are other communities doing? Do they have countywide reassessments every 10 years and then they have a system for how they reassess every year? I'd like to see that too, because I get the sense, and there's a lot going on, but I get the sense that waiting 35 years or whatever it was for a countywide reassessment has been one of the reasons for the jolt.
I would agree.
Yeah, and so I would like to know, had we done it in, 81 and 91 and 2000, would it have been less of an impact because our properties would have been adjusted all along the way and people would know where they were? And so, that's something, because right now I can tell you, the council probably never approve a countywide assessment again as long as they live. And so, but we need to know, was that, that reluctance, or maybe just not even thinking about it or not having been recommended, whatever the cause, was that delay actually the problem? So the delay is not done again.
Right.
So I think that information would be helpful too.
I'm not sure we can have the plan developed by next Tuesday.
Right.
But with time, we will.
Well, our objective obviously is that we never have a jolt to our community, to your board like this ever again. So what are the steps we need to take to make sure we have something that's adjusted more frequently to make sure that it's accurate and fair?
Right.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Appreciate you all again, and we're moving on. We've got approval of minutes for August 8th, 2017, and corrected minutes for July 25th, 2017. We have a motion and a second for approval. All those in favor, please state aye. All right, great. And it goes to the city attorney for his agenda. Mr. Fay.
Thank you, Mayor. We have a fairly short business agenda. The first item up is a rezoning at 5030, 5036 Farley Drive, and 205 North Star Drive. Is a petitioner here? Not? Okay. Gotcha. Going from single-family to, neighborhood commercial to single-family 2. Proposed use residential and recommended for approval. Are there any questions of council?
There does not appear to be questions at this time.
Okay, we'll bring that
Oh, wait,
back.
hold on a second. We've got, hold on, we've got Counselor Allen.
Can you, Mr. Clarify?
Hold on. What? Okay. All right, go ahead, Counselor Allen.
Can you just clarify for council why the owner is not here and the planning department is making the petition, and what's going to be the use of the property, and, why are we in this situation?
Yes, sir. Mr. Jimmy Lewis owns the house at, I think, 5030, or he owns one of the two houses on Farley Drive. His daughter, Starla, came to see us and was not aware that the property is zoned neighborhood commercial, and it creeped up into that neighborhood. I told her that the planning department would handle the rezoning for her if her neighbor, Ms. Nellie Smith, and Trent Chester of Chester's Barbecue agreed together to rezone the property so that we wouldn't need separate applications and separate signage. During the process, it was originally 5 lots. During the process, though, Mr. Chester came back and said, no, I want the 1 lot deepest into the neighborhood to be rezoned, but the 2 neighboring Chester's Barbecue, I want to leave them in C in case, so it doesn't infringe on his barbecue business. So we took it forward, originally 5, dropped it to 3, and it's 3. And the 2 Farley Drive homes have houses on them, and the one at 205 North Star is a vacant lot that has an access easement to Farley Drive. So what we're doing is taking non-conforming properties and making them conforming.
But why is the city planning division doing this for them?
Because it was 3 different property owners, and it was something that they did not do. We don't know how it got in C and why it creeps into that neighborhood. We've done this before on Casita Road, East Winton, Bellwood, Midtown, several areas. Where if it's several, we've done it on Layfield Road, where if it's several property owners that have a problem that was not caused by them but was caused by zoning, we've agreed to help them fix it.
Well, the reason I'm asking the question is I've run into people recently who have said, I wanted to do this, and they told me, this is years ago before your time, Rick may have been here, but the city told me I had to go to this zoning class. So now I have property I want to develop, and I'm kind of stuck in this situation because the city made me go there. If I want to do another type of zone, I can't change it. I'd have to go. The city forced them to do it, is what I'm saying. In other words, we had stated plan to widen the road. So all along that corridor, we changed the zoning class. Well, the state decided not to widen that road. So the property owners are stuck. So I just want to be clear that if that's the situation, then they have the right to come in just as this situation is here to petition you to talk about that.
Yeah, and they all signed the application, and as I said, this is in a neighborhood. This is
Well,
not.
I'm not necessarily concerned about this particular situation. It's other situations that other property owners find themselves in, and it's the same scenario. Either we don't know how it got classified in that zoning class, or the city forced them into whatever they're carrying at this point.
Council Allen, our track record speaks to that, though, where we see a need to go back in there and recapture an area to get the rezoning back to the right classification. We'll do that. It's my understanding here in this particular situation, though, we had one applicant come in, and we could have easily said, you need to file the application fee and rezone it. But we also, at the same time, saw an opportunity to capture the adjacent lots as well and bring them into compliance with the zoning. Otherwise, and this is what we have to deal with here, or these property owners have to deal with, is when they get ready to go to either refinance that home or add on to that home, they can't get a loan. They just can't get a loan. We're working right now, and we just had a meeting last week before, with the folks in the Waverly Terrace area. They're going through some of the same situations. We're trying to correct that problem or problems as we come across them, and that's what we're trying to do.
Okay.
We're not trying to hold anybody up. We're not trying to hold anybody hostage. We're just trying to make sure that we can help them. We will certainly do so.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, it seems like that's it.
All right, if there are no other questions, we'll bring that back in. We can bring it next week since we've got a consent agenda for a vote. Next item, Mayor, is the revisions to the Rabies animal registration ordinances. This was thought of as a one-stop shop for rabies and city permits, but there may be questions and discussion around the table. It's on first reading. Councilor Garrett, if you want to lead it off.
Yes, we have Councilor Garrett with discussion.
Just so my fellow councilors kind of know where this came about, I had a constituent in East Allen's neighborhood who she called animal control and she got cited, or she was calling on a neighbor, and they subsequently cited her. Her dogs were inside, and they cited her for not having a city permit, and she said, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what a city permit is, but I get my dog's rabies vaccination. And she had never basically been informed of that. And I started thinking about it. I went to my vet. I had never gotten a city permit either. So I got one, but it had never been brought up. So the law is you're supposed to have your city permit within 7 days of getting your rabies vaccination. I had Director Short look at the numbers, and we have 29,000, or at least the year we were looking at, I guess it would have been 2016, we had 29,000 rabies vaccinations permit issued, and then we had 19,000 city permits issued. That's a variance of 10,000, and at the minimum fee, which is due for the city permit, that's $10 a pop if they're already spayed, and it's a significant amount more, closer to $100 if they're unspayed. Basically, we're looking at least $100,000 in lost revenue. The vets, if they issue them, do get a $5 administrative fee, so it's not like they're losing money by doing this. I understand there's a concern about this might prevent people from going in for a rabies vaccination, but when you think about this, obviously a 501c3 would not be charging an administration fee if they're doing the permit. But if you don't have $10, are you going to be able to feed and take care of your dog? We just passed this chain-free ordinance, and we want to make sure dogs and cats and other animals are taken care of. So, I think we have to take that into consideration, if that's going to be a prohibitive issue. But right now, we know we've got at least $100,000 in revenue, probably more, which is being lost. So, and this just makes it a lot more simple for the citizen. They know they have to get the permit because it's going to be issued at the same time.
All right. We have Councilor Baker.
Yep. No, and I appreciate that, Councilor Garrett. I think I had sent the request for perhaps a delay in, simply because before an ordinance went through, I would like to hear, I know Paul's did have some concerns. I would like to be able to hear from Paul's directly. They did send an email. And also the vets in the area, and just to make sure everybody's on the same page, maybe to get input before the law goes out. I would just like to hear from some people and see if there are any issues we might be missing that somebody else might can shed some light on. But no, I understand your point. It's well taken. My purpose for requesting the delay was just to see if there are any other parties out there that might want to bring some information to the table before we put it into law. So that's, and I mean, that's a request for a delay. I don't know if council wants to I mean, it's the first reading. Anybody can speak anyway. Didn't want to deny first reading. Or continue the first reading, Mr. City Attorney, which way should we go?
I would just continue it for, if you want more than the next week, then for 3 weeks.
Yeah, because we have a business meeting. So
Right.
maybe if that's okay up to, I mean, that's to the will of council, but that would be my request, just to the next regular meeting. Have a continue the first reading.
Okay, any objections on that? We'll just bring it back in 3 weeks. Did anybody have questions? Ms. Short is here.
In the meantime, maybe we could notify the veterinarians in the area.
Okay. All right. Well, it looks like there's no objection to the requested postponement for 3 weeks. It is on first read. Did anybody want to speak or questions?
Got a hand out
Yes, ma'am. Come forward if you just state your name and address, please.
Good evening. I'm Joy Humphreys. I'm Deputy Director with Paws Humane. And it is our understanding that the ordinance revision would require pet owners to purchase the license when they receive their rabies vaccination. And it's our position that it could negatively impact the number of pet owners that would bring their animals to get rabies shots at, for instance, a Paws Humane free vaccine clinic. Our constituents that use our services are very price sensitive, and so although we do support the mandatory licenses, we would request that it not be attached to the rabies vaccine.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. We
Thank you.
appreciate it. Obviously, we're going to continue to talk about it. And,
Wonderful. Thank you.
And you always can share information with counselors, obviously.
Thank you.
Okay, and we have Counselor Baker.
Was there a stipulation about 501s in there, Mr. City Attorney? You want to mention that?
At the very end of Section 3, it talks about animals in the custody of the animal rescue or shelter licensed by the state shall be exempt from the city registration requirement and fees until the animal is adopted out with a private owner. But that's the only thing that's in here now.
That's correct. When we intake an animal at the shelter, they're given their vaccination at that time for animals that are brought into the shelter. And when the animals are adopted out, then the owner would be charged the additional fee at that time. We do understand that. Correct. Absolutely. We do free adoption events to, help rotate the animals out and, help our friends at the Animal Care and Control. And so we pull animals from there. So adoption obviously is very important. And again, that's an additional fee that would be charged to the adopter.
Okay, we've got Counselor Woodson.
What are all the fees? Excuse me, ma'am. I'm sorry. No, that's okay. What are all the fees that they pay right now when they come and pick up a pet from Paws?
The fees, what are the charges? They actually vary based on the age and type of animal. So for instance, an adult cat is $25. So by adding, that would be a 60% increase if we were to add the fee onto that. An adult or a puppy, for instance, is a $125 adoption fee. So it varies based on the animal, the
No,
age.
that's depending on the breed of the animal, correct? 'Cause
No, we do not. We're not breed specific. They're mixed breeds. So it's basically it's age and size.
Okay. But the law, is this let me get my thoughts right. The vaccine that they have to do is a state law, so you implement into Planet because of the state. So if we were to do it, you and then in turn would do the same thing that you do for the state. Because what we're trying to do is get accountability of the animals, because we get so many complaints of strayed animals on the road. We can't find them, we can't find the owners, and then we get the people that say, oh, you're just killing them. And so we're trying to find a sense of controlling it. I mean, we're not going to make everybody happy, but if we can kind of control it and get a 50-50 between our constituents that support animals and our constituents that don't want to see them out in their neighborhoods. That's one of the reasons why I think it's a good idea. And an important piece that I think that people should be educated on, when you adopt or you buy a dog, it's like a part of your family. So you have to account for the vet visits and any other thing that comes along with it, because that's now become a responsibility and part of the budget in a family. I think it could be also an educational piece. I'm not saying it's good, it's bad, but I am speaking for those that would feel like, okay, we need accountability, because I see this dog here, I see that dog running over here, and then when we go pick them up, nobody knows.
Right, and we do agree, obviously, when someone adopts an animal, it does become part of their family, and we are very careful when we make our matches so that we do place the animal in the right home. But again, it's an additional fee that basically the veterinarians and the veterinary clinics and the shelters such as ours, we become the enforcers by attaching it to the vaccine. We agree that they should be licensed, but that it should not be attached to the vaccine, because then again, it makes us the enforcers and the veterinarians.
Then can I ask you this? If you feel that you become an enforcer, what would be your participation in helping us to ensure these dogs are registered? Then, if you didn't do it,
We do offer the option when the animal is adopted. We do offer and suggest that they obtain the license, but we do not, it's not a requirement. So,
Okay.
I mean, that's our participation, is we tell them it is mandatory. They can go right next door, based on where we're located, to Animal Care and Control and get their license. So that's our process.
And for the people watching it, I did ask a question in reference to this about the individuals that are foster parents to animals. They don't have to pay the fee or register them, because they are in a temporary home, was my understanding.
That's
Because I
correct.
have a couple friends that are foster dog parents.
Good for them.
And by the way, when they saw this, my phone started ringing, and I
Right.
had to verify that. So for those that are wondering that are foster parents, they do have foster parents.
Yes, they
for
do.
dogs.
Actually,
I had to
when an
research.
animal is in foster care, it is actually owned by the shelter. So
Okay.
it does belong to the shelter, and of course, they have their vaccinations. But again, the license is not required until it would actually be adopted.
Okay.
So the foster parents would not be responsible for that,
Okay,
from my understanding.
all right, thank you.
All right, and we have Counselor Thomas.
I'd like to hear from Director Short, what your thoughts are on the process and how it should be implemented with the veterinarians, or with Paul's, or with your facility, or whatever. Would you just give us what your take is on the issue?
Well, the first thing I would like to remind the council is that this is not a new law. Animal registration has been on the books since the day that we took over animal control from the state. It is your registration for your animals. It is a part of the law as it is written right now. The only thing, and Councilor Garrett is absolutely correct in stating, is that we do have a lot of people who just absolutely choose not to follow the law. And it is the law, whether it's state or local, it's still the law. And because of that, we've got a large variation of people who do not get their animals registered, and they come in and we have no way of knowing who owns the animal. So this will also help us in being able to identify. those animal owners. Now, I will say back in the late 90s, not late 90s, early 90s, I remember distinctly that we started going door to door, checking for people for their registration, and they were outraged, and so we had to stop that practice. But I do think it is imperative for us to be able to have this law in force so that we can continue to reduce our euthanasia rate by being able to make contact with these owners so that they can come in and get their animals.
And I would think, Director, that this is like most other kinds of things that we do. We want to make it as easy as possible for the owner to get what they need.
That's correct. And as it stands right now, anybody can go to 16, I believe it is? 18 veterinarian, no, how many are? 16 local veterinarians currently are a part of what we call the one-stop shop animal registration service, which means that they can go to their vet, get their rabies tag, and pick up their registration all at the same time. The veterinarian that administers the rabies and sells the tag can charge their customer up to $5 as an administrative fee for handling the registration aspects of the animal. And we go around and we pick up from all of these veterinarians on a monthly basis. We do it now.
And then what about PAWS?
PAWS has chosen not to sell. Even though it could be a small revenue stream, it's still a revenue stream if they decided to sell them.
Okay, one of the things that Joy said was that they could send the owner right next door to
Right,
get
because
it.
we are directly next door.
And, you know, I'm looking for is there something we can do without sending the owner next door? Can we do it at, you know, at PAWS or whatever? But to make it as easy as possible. And I also understand, you know, Paul's point that they don't want to be the enforcer. That's not their role to enforce city codes and laws. I understand that. So we just, whatever we do, we need to make sure that it meets the end that we're trying to reach, I guess is what I'm saying.
Correct.
Thank you, Darrell.
You're welcome.
All right, I believe that's it for this, at this time, anyway.
Thank you.
Okay, that will be.
Oh, we've got another, yes, ma'am. Just come forward if you would. State your name and address, please, for the record.
Hi, I'm Carrie Riddick, and I work at Benning Animal Hospital, and I am a veterinarian here in Columbus. My home address is in Harris County. So we've actually had a local veterinary association meeting last week, and I may not be speaking for all the veterinarians, but our biggest concern is being caught into an aspect of administering a rabies vaccination for the purposes of safety and transmission of disease. And we're kind of have an oath to do that. And then also collect the fee for the city permit. And so the collection of the fee, I don't think is the issue. The concern is if we have a client that comes in and we quote them for their rabies vaccination and then we add on the mandatory city permit and they would like to decline it, then where do the veterinarians, you know, where do we go from there? Because we should administer the rabies vaccination. Then are we liable for that fee? Do we have to administer or, you know, give the city permit and then be required to pay that out of our own pockets or our businesses' pockets? Or do we have the option to say decline? And then we can keep a ledger of it so that the veterinarians are not going to be the ones that are at fault for what the owners are choosing to do.
Okay, we've got Counselor Thomas.
If you had someone who did that, and Ms. Short, you may want to chime in on this too, but if I declined and you had the form and you wrote declined on there, and you gave that to the animal control, then couldn't animal control follow up?
We will definitely follow
And your only obligation would be the form that says you offered it, but they declined it.
Right.
Would that work?
I feel that that would work, and that would help us in letter G. where it talks about that we would be providing the services, and it kind of, I guess, makes us feel like we're the ones that are, obligated and responsible. And veterinarians are going to try to follow exactly what is asked of us. So that clarification would be very helpful.
What do you think?
I am all for that. I just would like to remind the veterinarian community that when we did the door-to-door back in the late 80s, early 90s, they asked us where we got the list from. Well, we get it from the rabies registration. And so they started calling their veterinarians complaining about the fact that we were given this information, even though by law they have to. But I am not opposed to that at all. We'd be more than glad to do that. Because basically what they're doing is that they're signing that they're not going to follow the law, and we're going to enforce on that law.
Well, I think that's what I was going to say. If we print the form that the veterinarians are using to have them sign and say, I decline it, then somewhere on that form it should say, I recognize that,
I am subject
this
to
is
enforcement.
a city ordinance or whatever, so that the vet is not in any way liable, but we then have some kind of a record so that we can do what needs to be done. We don't want the vets not to give the rabies shot.
Right, I agree, absolutely agree.
So if you have a choice, give the shot.
Give the shot, absolutely. And then just to also, like at our hospital, we always, when we print out a rabies vaccine, we always print out a voucher for the city permit, and it's right on top of their rabies certificate. So as far as somebody not knowing that they're not looking at their paperwork at all, then they would not. And I feel that that has been fairly successful, at least putting the responsibility back to the owner as a suggestion.
Good, thank you.
Okay.
All right, that particular
We have a
alternative.
couple more. We have,
Okay, let me get this on the table.
okay.
That alternative we just discussed would take a small amendment. Do you want to offer that?
I have my light on too.
Okay,
You do that and add to it.
all right. That's
Okay. We've got a motion
one.
from Counselor Thomas, and it looks like a second from Counselor Garrett. Is that correct? Okay, and we continue on with discussion. We have Counselor Garrett.
I was just going to make an amendment to add that, so.
Okay. All right, we have Counselor Woodson.
I want to add to that before I was going to bring it up. I wanted to add on that after I listened to the veterinarian where she says she prints out and puts it on top, that be a requirement for all veterinarians and PAWs to print out that and give it to the person, and also wherever the decline is, so that they know that we are going to contact them. You decline it at this moment, but that is the law, so we are going to contact you. I think that was an excellent suggestion that they used, and I think that was a wonderful compromise to it. So I'd like to amend it that they also add that statement on top of the receipt when they give it to the individual, that they have to, if not with them, they still have to register the dog, because it is a law. Any problems with that, Councilor Thomas? Garrett?
No.
So he can word it where it makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
Is that okay with that amendment? Okay.
All right. It's been motion and second. This is the amendment. Let's go ahead and vote on that. There's no more discussion. All those in favor, please state aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. And there appears to be no further discussion on that item.
All right. Well, we will bring that back then in 3 weeks, continued first reading with those amendments. Next item, Mayor, is the revision that's gone around the table on the enforcement mechanisms to abate various nuisances. The revision adds in code and enforcement director to sections 2 and 3, since Mr. Hutchison's office would be responsible for those particular sections. But again, Councilor Garrett, you want to lead off with discussion?
Okay. We've got Counselor Garrett.
I'll keep it short and sweet. This is pretty much what we talked about. It's the first part of basically giving a little more teeth to our codes of enforcement. Part of this will allow basically the city to go in, and if there's a major issue and all the neighbors are complaining, and they cannot get the owner occupant to reply, to basically go in and fix it and then levy that against the property, either put a lien on it or continue to go after them. There's some more specifics, and there are a lot of other things, like the solid waste ordinances are going to be amended, or at least proposals will be put forth, but there are going to be quite a few things coming forth, but this is just one of the first steps. So.
Okay.
All right.
Anything further?
Any other questions? This again relates to cleanup of lots for various health and environmental issues and penalties. All right.
Hold on a second, we've got Counselor Baker.
Yeah, I just had a question where it starts not paid within 30 days after doing the work. We can actually seize property that soon?
Well, you can issue an execution in the clerk's office of Superior Court.
Walk us through how that works.
Well, that would be the finance director taking the amount of the costs that are levied to clean up the lot, putting it on a piece of paper, go to the clerk's office, put it on the general execution docket, which is a book of judgments in the clerk's office. And after that point, it can be collected in the future, but it's got to be recorded as an execution in the clerk's office.
I'm just trying to get an understanding. I completely agree with Councilor Garrett. Our ordinance do need to be tightened up, and we need to protect the neighbors who are living next to these type of situations. But, you know, if there's a mix-up in the mail or mailing address or something, and all of a sudden 30 days you're seizing somebody's property.
No, the 30 days is just to get it on the general execution docket. It would not be sold or on the courthouse steps within the 30 days.
Okay, well, does that type of due process need to be in the ordinance, or is that state law somewhere else? I mean, it says advertised and sold under such execution.
Yeah, that's state law. That's all controlled by state law and the charter that lets the finance director issue an execution. That there's got to be notice, another notice before anything is sold on the courthouse steps, and advertisements.
I just want to make sure we're protecting due process.
Yeah, that's a pretty drastic measure to get to the actual sale, but sometimes it does happen.
Okay. And I guess the owner could go down and basically
Right.
buy it for the cost of the lien.
The
anyway,
owner can
right?
redeem the property, pay off the lien.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we have Counselor Henderson.
Yeah, and I know you just answered that. That was my question, too. I commend Councilor Garrett. I think this is long overdue, and given our codes and enforcement the right to fix the problem instead of just chasing the cause of it. And for a long time, we've had to do that. But I was concerned as well about the timeline, and if you're comfortable with the fact, 'cause it scared me not having a very legal mind. It scared me looking at that, saying that the 30 days, it started talking about a sale to satisfy the lien. And I initially thought that maybe we put a couple of different levels where on the first offense, if we had to put a lien on, because something like that typically is going to be recurring, where you end up having to go back out there if they don't fix it, and you're going to put an additional lien on there. And I can see where in some of these instances, these things will mount up. And I think after they've become a regular nuisance, and I know, oh man, we've had some serious conversations with folks in the land bank about the fact that there needs to be a funding mechanism for just chronically blighted properties. But I get a little nervous when I see anything to do with condemnation, and I guess I'm kind of like Councilor Baker. I just want to make certain that we're not going to administratively 30 days in to initiate a process that may only take another 6 months that culminates in a seizure.
No, this is a last resort. The first thing that happens if you read through all this legalese is notice and summons to recorder's court. And a lot of times the problem is corrected after somebody is cited in recorder's court. But if it's not, the last resort would be to clean the property, clean the pond, whatever it is, and then place a lien on the property, and an execution could issue, and down the road, it could be sold.
Okay. And I guess this also, to ask Councilor Guerra, this includes if there's a swimming pool in the backyard of an abandoned property or a property that stood vacant for a long time, even if they drain it, the rainwater will recollect and it becomes a breeding ground for mosquito that kind of harasses the entire neighborhood. I guess that would count too, not just ponds or not just, okay. All right, and frankly, I'm okay with the idea as an ultimate last-ditch effort, seizing the property, because my feeling is this is going to help us a lot with properties that have stood vacant for dozens of years, and nobody stepped up to try to take ownership, and for all we know, there may not be any surviving owners left. So I'm fine with it. I just got a little nervous about seeing the seizure part.
Okay.
All right. Any other
We've
questions?
got several others lined up now. We've got Councilor Allen.
Thank you, Mayor. Clifton, does it say that that's the process, as Councilor Henderson described? I mean, should we change the language to make it clear that that's the steps that the staff needs to take?
I think it's pretty clear. They first go to recorder's court, then they get a notice from the health officer, and then they get another certified mail notice about how to correct it. If it's not corrected within 10 days, then the Director of Public Works can have the work performed, and that constitutes a lien against the property. And if it's not paid within 30 days, the Finance Director can issue an execution. And that's
Okay.
in here on each type of violation.
Okay, let's go back to the health department.
All right?
I had a situation where there was a pool. The person appeared to be in a hoarding-type situation. We could not get a site or any assistance timely from the health department. Could we cite, do we need the health department in that instance? If they slow play it, then that's just more time and negative effect on the community.
You do need them, because if you can't find a local owner, they've got to go and issue, under the state laws that also interplay with this, a notice at the address shown in the tax records with a copy to the occupant, if there is one, if it's commercial. But you do need the health officer. We've talked to the health department lawyer about it. They're okay with this language.
Can we get them to agree to, in this situation, to expedite the process?
Well,
We make it a requirement.
they're going to have to notify the owner, and they have to do it by certified mail, and that's just a requirement of our ordinance and state law.
The health department has to notify the
The
owner?
health officer is what they call it, but it's going to be an enforcement officer at the health department.
Well, that's my question, is we had a situation where for almost a year, city manager had to get involved. If he hadn't got involved, I don't know where we would be right now with this situation, because I had a constituent call me over a period of months, and we were trying to get a situation resolved like this. And it was a horrible, and there was a child, a 9-year-old child lived there with a daughter. The mother owned the house. And another thing I want us to address in this ordinance too is what would happen when the city would cite them. The mother would go and pay early without going to recorder's court. She never went to recorder's court, so the environmental court never got to see her. She would circumvent the law. So we need to take the ability to go and pay the bond or whatever that situation is early away. There should not be an option there for them to do that. They have to go to recorder's court if they're in this situation. If they're cited, they have to go to recorder's court or environmental court, whatever it's going to be.
Well, and that's the theory. If you've got a local person you can cite, serve with a summons. But if not, you go to the next step with the health officer issuing a certified letter.
Okay. What's the legal terminology? If I don't want to go to recorder's court and I go pay the ticket early, is that going down? What am I doing? Where do I go when I do that?
You'd actually go to Recorder's Court, and you could forfeit bond if you don't appear.
Okay, that's what I want to, I don't want them to have that option. You understand that?
Right.
Am I making it clear?
Sure.
Okay, that's what I want to take away. So whatever language we need to put in there to remove that option for them, we need to do that.
Well, let us work on that first part.
All right, thank you.
Okay, and we have Counselor Woodson.
Clifton? I'm sorry, go ahead and finish. I just want to ask, adding to what Gary said, what happens if we can't locate the property owner, or the property owner has passed away, or is the property in probate court? We won't be able to use this then, would we?
No, yes, the next step is the health officer at the health department would notify the owner at the last known address on the tax records with a copy to any occupant, and they have to send that by certified mail and tell them what to do to abate the nuisance. And if they don't do it within 10 days, the Director of Public Works has the work done to clean it up.
Well, here, let me give you an example, because it's not registering. There's a piece of property right now that we are working on. The person passed away. The property was given to 3 family members. We only can locate 1 family member, but they don't have all the rights to the property. In a situation like that, using that as an example, how would this play into it?
They would still send a certified mail notice to any owner of record.
But wouldn't that person, if that person complies with what we're saying, couldn't then the other family members sue us or sue the
No.
individual? Because there were 3 people on that property,
they
and only
may-
1 person was notified out of the 3 people.
No. If we only know of 1 known person's address on the tax record, then they can't sue the city. They can squabble among themselves, but they can't sue Ms. Short or the city.
Even if we have the 3 individuals,
Yeah.
the properties, their addresses, but we can't communicate with them, but we've only reached 1 of them, we're able to communicate, it's still
Right.
okay.
It's okay as long as we get notices to every potential owner. If we've got an address, the health department officer would do that. That's okay.
And if, let's say, the property that we're addressing is already in probate court, would this override probate court?
Well, this would play into anybody who's an executor of an estate.
So it would
And
play even to the courts
They would
then?
have to get notice
Okay.
of any violation like this. They'd get the same letter if it was an executor.
So if the court is trying to do whatever they do to appoint somebody or make clarification of who really owns the property or not, they would be the ones that make the decision based on this. If we gave this to them and said, hey, we want this property now because A, B, C, and D, then the courts will have to honor this ordinance?
Well, the courts would, I'm sure, help us with the enforcement. If there's an executor that we find out about, then the health officer or Ms. Short is going to take them the same certified letter and say, this has got to be cleaned up. If not, we're going to put a lien on the property. And then normally the executor would take care of it.
So the judge would then, in turn, could say, let's say there's nobody and they're getting ready to make someone the executor. Once the judge makes them an executor, him or her, he would then advise them, okay, this is now in play. You have to comply with this or you were going to lose the property, even though I just made you the executor of that piece of property.
The judge,
Am I understanding you
I'm
correct?
sure would advise them of that, the executor, but the executor would also get a formal notice in the mail.
The new executor.
Yes.
I like the idea, but I'm a little concern. I'm not sure about it. I need to talk to Garrett later. I'm a little uneasy with it. I understand the concept and I think it's good, but I'm a little concerned because it's almost like domain and we kind of try to stay away from that. So can we just meet later and discuss it a little bit more? Because right now, I don't know if I can support it or not. Thank you.
We've got Counselor Baker.
And I want to talk a second with what Counselor Allen was talking about, because I was helping somebody on an environmental court issue, and we were told that once the summons was issued, it did not have a dollar amount on it that you could go down and pay. And at that point, it was transferred to the judicial branch, and the judge is the only one that had jurisdiction over it. And you had to appear before that judge, and I went down there and watched a couple of cases, and the ones who did not appear, he issued a bench warrant for their arrest. And, you know, unless you call and the judge gives you permission to go pay it, you know, we were told you had to appear in court. There was no dollar amount on there that you could just circumvent and go to a window and pay, you know, until after the court case was adjudicated. You know, the judge issued a fine, but before that, there wasn't a dollar amount on the citation. It was a summons to appear, and those that did not appear, he issued a bench warrant for them. And that may be what Counselor Allen Moore was getting at.
He wants to avoid the bond forfeiture possibility and make the person appear, is the way I understood it.
Well, I think the code enforcement officer cited them. And so they went down and paid the fee and never went to court.
Right.
The neighbors were stuck with this horrendous.
Problem was never corrected.
Yeah.
Right. And we're going to tweak this paragraph on that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I think that's it.
Okay, well, would you rather us bring that back next week or 3 weeks for a vote? Just, if we can get the language in there, bring it next week. Okay. We will attempt to do that, bring it back for a vote at next week's meeting. And then the next, last item, Mayor, is a resolution recognizing members of the Ben Davis Senior family for their unparalleled service to the United States and to their communities. I think there is an event that's coming up while they wanted to have this tonight.
Please come forward. Yes, Mr. Davis, and thank you so much for your patience, and Eileen as well. Please come forward here to the podium. Our Mayor Pro Tem is going to read the resolution. And if you'd like to, yes, you can come up here to get better pictures. Thank you for your patience. I'm so very sorry you have had to wait so long to be recognized, but we very much appreciate you being here. And we're going to turn it over to our Mayor Pro Tem and allow her to read this resolution into the record.
Good evening. Whereas the Ben Davis Senior family has enjoyed a distinguished history of service in the military, whereas 11 of the 16 Davis children have served a total of 164 years in the armed forces of our country.
58.
Sir?
58?
158, okay. Whereas LeBron Davis served 20 years in the U.S. Army, including a tour in Vietnam, whereas Ben Davis Jr. served 33 years both in the U.S. Navy and U.S. Army Reserves, whereas Edward Davis served 20 years in the U.S. Army, whereas Calvin Davis served 4 years in the U.S. Army, in the U.S. Navy, whereas Octavius Davis served 2 years in the U.S. Army, whereas Alfonso Davis served 29 years in the U.S. Army, whereas Nathaniel Davis served 3 years in the U.S. Army, whereas Julius Davis served 13 years in the U.S. Air Force, whereas Washington Davis, deceased, served 6 years in the U.S. Army, whereas Frederick Davis served 2 years in the U.S. Army, whereas Augusta Davis served 29 years in the U.S. Air Force, whereas the Davis brothers served in Europe, America, and Asia, in combat and in peace, in air, on land, and sea, whereas to this day 13 of the 16 Davis children stay close and organize annual family reunions across the United States. Whereas the accomplishments of the Ben Davis senior family are worthy of special recognition by this council. Now therefore, the Council of Columbus, Georgia hereby resolves. We hereby commend the members of the Ben Davis senior family for their unparalleled service to this country and to their communities. And let a copy of this resolution be forwarded to each of the above-named Davis family members. And I move for its adoption.
All right, all those in favor, please state aye. All right. And sir, we'd welcome you to say a few words.
Well, say a few words. Yes, it was a large family, and we did do 158 years in the military, Army, Air Force, and the Navy. And to top that, we have one uncle living. He's the only Pearl Harbor survivor in Alabama. He served 30 years, 10 years Navy, and then 20 years Marines. And he will be here next Monday. Next Monday will be a celebration for the family out at the Infantry Museum, and we're going to put pavers in the ground for the largest family to have ever been in the military. And if anybody can top 11 blood brothers in the military, I'd love to see them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir, come around and let us recognize you. Sir, they want to give you two. They're going to provide you with one, and we want to make sure we get that year right, okay?
Thank you.
All right, thank you again, sir. All right, we are moving on now. We have our public agenda, and so we want to turn it over to our citizens who would like to address council. And first, we have Mr. Jackson Turner, who would like to speak to us about property taxes. Sir, if you come up to the podium, you'll have 2 5-minute sessions, and so I'm going to go ahead and mark your time.
Go ahead.
And also state your name and address, please.
My name and address? Oh, okay. Jackson Turner, 3766 Forest Road, Columbus, Georgia. Now everybody knows my address. Gee, thanks, okay? That's not a good thing, but thank you anyway, okay? You know what? Y'all been going on for like an hour and a half about property taxes. I heard so much about it. There's no way I'm going to take you through 10 minutes of this. A lot of what I was going to talk about was covered in what was already discussed. So I'm just going to flip through and see what wasn't covered, if you don't mind. Just had a nice speech written, was going to go through the whole thing. There's just no point in it. So first of all, my tax increase was 3,020% on one property, okay? Not 1,000, not 500, 3,020%, okay? That's not a small amount. Yes, there was a mistake made. Somebody finally said the word mistake, okay? Yes, there was a mistake made. I'm speaking from an information technology perspective. What I come down here for was to say, let's talk about this from an information technology's perspective, not we're all mad about our taxes, okay? I've been in information technology for 23 years, okay? When we got our notices, I was like, you know what, somebody made a mistake, okay? A huge mistake. So I think somebody says, gee, thanks for finally saying we made a mistake. Yeah, we made a mistake, okay? Going through my notes, seeing what wasn't discussed. Bear with me, because most everything else that was discussed was already taken care of. I think somebody brought up the fact, why didn't we do a comparison before we rolled out live? You know what? It's called a negative test, all right? In the information technology world, that's like a negative test. You test what you do to see if it makes sense, okay? Compare your data. It's not that hard. I think I heard somebody say, the software doesn't work, so we can't do that. You know what? Then later on, they were giving you example after example where they compared. So either they can compare or they can't. They were giving you, said, well, we have this many that had this, were off by this much, and this many that were off by this much, and this many were off by this much. But early on, they said, well, we really can't compare. The software is not compatible. We can't compare. So an hour into the conversation, they could compare. 15 minutes into the conversation, it doesn't work. We can't compare. So which is it? You know, they could have compared the data. They could have said, here's what the taxes are last year. Here's what the taxes are this year. Take one day, apply a standard deviation, simple statistical data. Address, taxes, standard deviation. You're off by a factor of 15. Something's wrong. It could have been done to begin with. They didn't have to wait and just drop the bomb on us. And essentially that's what they did. They made a huge mistake. They failed to test the software. They did not test it. I'm telling you, after 23 years, I know they didn't test it. Somebody needs to go to them and say, show me your test plan. Show me your test plan. Show me your implementation plan. Show me your test plan, and show me your results. Now, if Tyler Technologies is watching this right now, they're panicking because they're going, we don't have a test plan. We don't have test results, okay? That's like a 6-year-old doing your long form, okay? If they can't produce a test plan, they've got nothing, okay? You need to go ask for your money back. If they can't produce a test, if they can't say, here's the test plan, here's an implementation plan, here's our positive testing, here's our negative testing, here's all this testing. If they can't go, boom, and give it to you, go get your money back. Because that's the minimum standard, okay? There's a minimum standard for this kind of thing, and that is beneath the standard, okay? I don't know how many millions y'all paid, but I'm telling you, if you can't get a test plan and test results and see them, you got ripped off. That's it, okay? There's 2,000 professional programmers in this city, they'll tell you the same thing. Y'all got burned bad if you can't get a test plan and test results in your face, okay? And that's the truth. Now, I was talking about the minimum standards. That's the test plan, the test results. If you don't have test plan, test results, you have nothing. They didn't meet the minimum standard that you paid for.
That's just your 5-minute warning, sir.
Do you want to hear some more, or have you had enough?
It's just your 5-minute warning, sir.
Okay. Well, I'm telling you, you know what? I'm telling you straight up that, you know what? They didn't meet a minimum standard. Hire a consultant to go behind them and see what they did. You know, it seems like they're apart and separate from the Columbus Consolidated Government. You know, they have to walk in here with an attorney beside them, which makes me spooky automatically, you know. If you didn't do anything wrong, then why are you walking around with an attorney beside you, okay? So that just it caught my eye, I'll say that. They should be very concerned, I'll be honest with you, because it will not stand scrutiny, okay? A few more things. You know what I need to do is I need to go back and look in great detail at what was said here and compare to what I've written, because I could probably come back next time around and give you a lot of information about the truth, about the smoke and mirrors part, and kind of just set you straight, because really it seems like there's a lot missing, and I'm just going to leave it at that. Can I see you next time on the same topic?
Sure, absolutely.
2
You know
weeks?
how to do it.
2 weeks?
2 weeks.
Thank you.
Or 3 weeks, 3 weeks, yes.
Day or night?
In the morning,
In the morning.
9 a.m.
Y'all promise?
Yeah.
Gotta sign up first.
Well, last time I did one, it switched schedules on me.
All right, thank you, Mr. Turner. And also, Mr. Lomax, go ahead and put down, when the Tyler person comes, I think we need those questions specifically addressed. Was there a negative test run? And all of the things that Mr. Turner just said. What sort of testing did they do? We'd like to hear that.
Can I give it to you more professionally? If you want to
I
ask
think
some
we've got,
questions-
yeah, but certainly, but I think that's enough. They may be here as early as next week, and we don't want to miss the opportunity.
We know I'm going to test it.
Yeah, you can send us an
I'll
email.
put it together.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving on, we have Mr. Christopher Reyes. Oh, I think he actually left. I did see him here earlier, so I'm sure he'll be back on at another date. Mr. Paul Olson, who would like to talk about the State Tax Commissioner, property taxes, tax penalties, and tax abatement. Hello.
Mayor, first I want to give this to Tiny Worston.
Okay.
You know, it's past my bedtime.
You got 40 more minutes.
Yeah, right.
But you only have 10 more minutes at the podium.
My name is Paul Olson. I live at 13830 Upatoy Lane. I was a little bit surprised when Judy Thomas was asking the questions about the vote, and they said, well, we told Clifton Faith, the city attorney. I'm thinking, well, one more time, he had the information, blindsided you guys. It was embarrassing, I thought. Let's go to, we never needed Tyler Technologies. We never needed to spend that $4.5 million. And we don't need to pay $191,000 a year annually for maintenance and operations and lease it through Georgia Municipal Association. Above the tax digest, with the budget, we were to look at $1.3 million of basically more taxation from the property taxes itself. And I looked at the numbers, and with the $4.5 million and $191,000 each and every year, it'll take us 4 years, and we'll be working for Tyler Technology, the taxpayers, for the next 4 years. And what Jackson Turner was saying was basically a performance contract. And in that, we were talking about basically computations, and that's what Walker Garrett was talking about, and several of you other were talking about it. And the thing is like I said before, out in Upatoy, they don't factor in the noise. They didn't factor in so many other things like bank foreclosures, short sales, and so on and so forth. You need to look at the computations. Senate Bill 346 allows you and everybody else out there to look at this. And the thing is it needs to be up on their website, all these caveats, all these conditions, terms and conditions on the tax assessor's website so everybody can view it. That's called transparency, okay? I'm estimating of the 1,564 people that basically had in excess of 2 acres, and mine has 5.5, the other 3.5. In essence, I'm looking at, my bill went up 500, and you times that times 1,564, and it's $800,000. And so basically the people out in Midland and Upatoy who were blindsided since 1983, 34 years for some people, 25 for me. And I gave this last week, or last time we were here, I gave this to Skip Henderson. I gave that to Tiny Washington. It says no in homestead exemption. You can go back 25 years on my property. And the thing is, I didn't know about it because people said, well, you failed to do this yourself, Paul. And I said, well, because my taxes didn't go up, I thought everything was frozen. And so didn't everybody else, all the 1,564 property owners. This was not an isolated situation for me. That's why they were out en masse, and that's why they were mad as a hornet's nest, okay? And so, therefore, they failed to basically do their job. And if a citizen had failed to pay their property taxes and own their property, and they had failed for 3 years, failing to pay their penalties and late fees, they would actually confiscate it, the tax commissioner, and auction it out on the courthouse steps. But you let those people, the tax assessors board, who are paid, they're compensated for their work, a stipend, on a monthly from the city, they failed to do their job. And in the Army, it's called dereliction of duty. They talked about regulations, John Williams, and I go back to the rules of Department of Revenue, Chapter 560-11-2, Local Government Services and Division. Underneath C, audit selection criteria, which I gave to you, Tiny, so you can also make copies to each and every one of you out there. It says the appraisal staff shall, and shall means must in Barron's legal terms. You know that, all you lawyers up there, okay? Recommend to the Board of Tax Assessors a review and audit selection criteria, and the appraisal staff shall follow such criteria when adopted by the board. And now you say, and I know his argument will be, well, it's an audit criteria. You guys have to audit all the departments. This is the inventory that they have. So basically, in essence, they're auditing this. The criteria should be designed to maximize the number of personal property returns that may be reviewed or audited with existing resources. The criteria should be fair, unbiased, and developed consistent with the requirements of Code Section 48-5-299. All personal property accounts should, and the word should in the Army, and this is Army regulations, and this is their regulations that they have to abide by, is imperative. And I hope you guys understand what the word should is. Imperative means it's a command. Should is a command. It isn't like, well, it's a recommendation like Randy Lomax said, be reviewed at, and it says should be reviewed or audited at least once every 3 years. I gave that to Tiny, okay? And it's highlighted. And failure to adopt a plan is misfeasance. When I went to the Tax Assessors Board yesterday, I asked them, do you have a plan? And Chester Randolph, the chairman, said, no, we don't. I said, well, when do you plan on implementing it? Well, I don't know when. And I said, well, could you give me a time frame? And they said, I can't do it because then you'll hold it to me. And by God, I had 3 company commands and a battalion command. And if you said that to me, and if I said that to one of my bosses, a brigade commander, he'd fire me so fast, just like you said, Gary Allen, if this was the corporate world, you'd be fired right there on the spot. Well, guess what? Because they're not consistent with what their duties were, and they failed to perform those duties, it is your obligation as a city council to remove each and every one of those members. And I'm asking you today to remove them for misfeasance. Then I also gave you, Tiny, a situation with John Williams. Let me give you a little bit of his criteria about that. John Williams basically was the deputy tax commissioner. He was served from 2011 to 2015. On May 11, 2015, he basically took the job as deputy chief appraiser. At the same time, he was the deputy chairman of the Tax Assessors Board up until June 6, 2015. You cannot be in a dual capacity. It's a violation of the city charter, and it's a violation of the OCGA 48-5-292, which I gave to Tiny. That's evidence. I want you to make a copy for each and every one of you to understand that he was in total violations. And then when Chester Randolph said, well, he's not political, guess what? When it was coming to lifting the property tax freeze, again, I gave you information that says the committee to lift the property tax freeze, he was on that website, and his picture was on that. And when you have a picture on a website endorsing lifting the property tax freeze, then you become a political activist. And he is in violation of his oath because his oath says that he has to be impartial in his demeanor. Well, that's not being impartial, that's being a political activist. So therefore, I'm giving you grounds on both those people and all the other people involved of not doing their jobs. And lastly, and I'll let you go at this, on their website, okay, this is their website, the Tax Assessor website, it says, this is underneath their mission statement and their primary responsibilities. The county appraisal staff shall be responsible for preparing annual assessments on all property required to be assessed by the Board of Assessors. Now, it's telling you time and time again that they failed to do their job. And guess what? We are picking up the penalties and the fees because mine was 360%. I'm paying for their mistake. You know, if you take 25 years times 3%, I have a real estate license, guys. It should go up, and you do too, Skip. By God, property I don't know, if you take 25 into 360, it's about 12, 13%. I don't know any property around here that appraises like that, especially when it's sitting next to Fort Benning and getting bombed on a daily basis at 3 o'clock in the morning, okay? Ain't gonna happen, guys. You know, it's not gonna happen. And then my son-in-law's 1,100%. And then I gave you a thing of Paul Price's, his was 3,000%. And when you got that much of a variance and disparity from 360 to 1,100 to 3,000, and they don't say that they have a problem, by God, yes, they have a problem. It's called incompetency, because they didn't do their job, and they come up and snibble because they said they were short on staff. Well, it looks like they're very diligent about getting these appeals reviewed, and they don't want it to, so it'll be overturned. And so they had diligence now. Where was their diligence before? And God bless each and every one of you, and I'm going to bed tonight. Take care, guys.
It looks like Ms. Alamina's not here this evening. I think she did send out a notice she was going to postpone. So that concludes our public agenda, and we are moving on to the city manager's agenda. Mr. Hughley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First on my agenda, I have Williams Road Limited Access Break, asking approval for breaks in the limited access right-of-way of.
We've got a motion and second for approval. There appears to be no discussion on this matter, and you may record your votes electronically. And it passes. Is the IT guy still here? I'm having some issues with, okay, we'll go ahead and just do it as we can. Councilor Henderson.
Thank you, Mayor. I approve that these comments aren't really to the motion, but with regards to the traffic situation out there, I know my counselor out there, Glenn Davis, has been doing a pretty good job of trying to get information, but there's already a tremendous amount of backup and congestion right there at Fortson and Williams Road because of the four-way stop. I know that there's a roundabout planned, and I also know that there's traffic improvements planned up at the interchange with 185. And during regular day time hours, it's not too bad, but during peak traffic, it's awful. Speaking both as a council member and as a constituent out there, I would love to get just a quick update. I know we've had one recently, but in light of the fact that we're going to put some additional curb cuts and encourage development out there, I think it's kind of important that we try to expedite some of those traffic improvements.
Okay. We can certainly provide you with an update, not tonight.
No,
Yeah.
not tonight. That's fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
And who did you say your counselor is?
Big guy over there.
Oh.
He does a good job.
We've got a $4,899 grant for the sheriff's office. It's an MOU with the U.S. Marshals Service. There's no match for this $4,800 grant.
Got a motion and second for approval. There appears to be no discussion on this item. I'm queuing it for your vote. And it passes.
Got the fiscal year 17 Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant. It's $95,107.
Got a motion and second for approval. Is there any further discussion on this? Seeing none, let me cue it for your vote. And you may enter your vote electronically. All right, and it does pass.
And asking for approval to submit an application to Georgia Department of Transportation for installation of a signal and other improvements at Macon Road and Citizens Way.
Got a motion and second for approval. We have Councilor Thomas, the Mayor Pro Tem. Okay, and we have Councilor Thomas for discussion.
Mr. City Manager, this is the intersection just right here, is that correct?
That's correct.
At the end of this. And I know that GDOT would have done a traffic study or so forth. Could we have a little report on that, or what did they find? I mean, my purpose is from 185, getting on Macon Road at 185 to Rigdon Road, there are already several traffic signals, and so I'm wondering about why are we putting another one here?
Yes, ma'am. When they did the traffic study, they determined that had been 28 crashes at this particular intersection from the period of 2012 and 2016. And they also looked at the number of public facilities that have been added to this area, including the City Service Center, the natatorium, and now we have a new school right here as well. And that's going to increase traffic and potential for more accidents, if you will. So in looking at that, they looked at several methods to try to reduce the number of accidents. And they determined that 12 out of that 28 were intersection related, so it was related to the way that the intersection operated. So then they started looking at different ways to address that. And along with that, they were looking at pedestrian traffic as well, because a lot of people apparently walk from this area across Macon Road, go into some of the restaurants to eat or to the drugstore. And so they were trying to improve safety for pedestrian crossings as well. So this is the design that they came up with. That
Currently, this is not just a right turn only intersection, is it? Or is it?
It is a right turn from Citizens Way to Macon Road.
On to Macon Road.
Right. Correct, I'm sorry.
And will that remain that way?
Yes, ma'am. But it will, because now there's a striped island, so it physically doesn't prohibit cars from making a left-hand turn. They will have islands that will further restrict cars and their movement.
Okay.
And they'll have a signal that will allow the left turn, as well as a signal that will protect the pedestrians when they try to cross the road.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. We have Counselor Allen.
Thank you, Mayor. Donna, we talked about, I think initially the DOT was going to allow U-turns.
At the intersection?
I think they talked about coming out of the service station. They were going to be able to come around the median.
In looking at the design, the islands are short of that driveway, so they still should be able to come out of the driveway and make a left-hand turn onto Macon Road.
You have a design?
It's on ECAP.
Sorry.
That may not, pull up the other one, there's an
Really?
aerial right here. Okay,
There you go. Zoom in.
can you zoom in?
There you go, Mike.
No, wait a minute. There you go. Correct. Yours doesn't show all the scribbling that's on here.
Donna, while you're trying to do that, will the lights be synchronized? Because if it's not, I can foresee a backlog. I mean, just a log jam.
All of our signals are.
It's supposed to
Right,
be.
they'll be interconnected, they will be interconnected, as well as, you can't see it on this particular drawing, but there'll be loops, detector loops in there. And then a portion of the if you will, the westbound movement, that's called a stop and go signal, where it will stay green a large part of the time, except for instance, in the case of a pedestrian trying to cross the road, then it would be red. But if there's no opposing movement, then it would stay green the majority of the time. It operates a little bit different than a normal signalized intersection.
How will the pedestrian access determine when the light changes?
It will be actuated. They'll press the button, and that sends a message to the controller, and then it will complete the cycle and bring up the pedestrian movement, and then the signal would be all red, and then the pedestrian it would have the countdown more than likely where they can get across the
So
road.
there's literally no way you could synchronize them,
Well, they'll be talking to each other, yes.
the lights.
The lights will be talking to each other.
But I'm thinking if you had 5 people a minute apart, walk up to that light, pushes the button, they get across, and then a minute later, another person pushes the button. So you're going to have that thing changing to accommodate the pedestrians every time the button's pushed.
Well, typically, a lot of times, those type signals are designed where they won't necessarily get it every cycle. The pedestrian, they may have to go through a couple of
Okay,
cycles
so
before.
it'll recognize the pedestrians there, but it may cycle through.
Right.
Okay.
It's still gonna
Make them wait.
be geared toward the amount of traffic volume, if
Okay.
you will.
Thank you.
And if you can see, the driveway is beyond the island, if you can see it up there. It's kind of hard with their white lines on there, but there's where the car's sitting, there's a driveway right there, coming out of the convenience store, gas station. So where that truck is close to where the apron, and they would be able to come across where you got the dual left turns right there. I know. But we also, one of the concerns that came out in the public meeting that we held was the ability to make a left-hand turn onto Mercury, and they have retained that in this particular design.
Thank you.
Okay?
All right, thank you. Something further?
I don't think a vote has been,
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought,
Counsel Thomas has no question.
oh, okay, I'm sorry, let's go back then. We have Counselor Thomas for further discussion.
Ms. Newman, are you saying where the car is on the, coming out of that gas station, that they will be able to cross 2 lanes of traffic on Macon Road and make a left-hand turn to go back down toward 185?
They're doing that today.
But
That driveway will remain open, so there won't be a physical hindrance from them being able to do that. The island, you see the gray area is the concrete island. And it's not quite to that driveway.
Okay. The other thing that I wanted to ask, this says that if this passes, we're authorizing you to submit an application to GDOT for this. Is that pretty much a foregone conclusion that if we submit the request, they will do this?
Yes,
in
ma'am,
this
they already have this
configuration?
scheduled.
They already have it scheduled?
Well, they have it in their work plan in the event that we submit the application, and they'll go ahead and they'll actually pay for the construction, and then the city will then maintain and operate it like we do all the other signals in the city.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and with that, discussion has concluded, and the item is queued for your voting. I think we're missing. Oh, here we go. All right. Thought we had somebody out, and it does pass.
I've got Unified Certification Program update for Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program. So asking council to approve updating the Memorandum of Understanding with Georgia Department of Transportation for this program, which is an element of the city's Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program for Federal Transit Administration.
Okay, we got a motion and second for approval. Is there any further discussion? All right, seeing none, you may record your votes electronically. And bless you. Is that everybody? Okay. Yep, we've got it. And it did pass.
On the purchases, I've got membership dues for Georgia Municipal Association, $34,923.
Okay, we've got a motion and second to approve items A through E. Any discussion on any of these items? Seeing none, they are queued for your voting. All right, and it does pass. They pass.
Madam Mayor, I've got,
We've got, hold on a second, we've got Counselor Huff.
Mr. City Manager, I had a phone call today. If you would, check into it for me. The church, New Birth, New Beginning Church, their address is 505 Casita Avenue. And for some reason, their address has been changed to 4253 Willis Street, and all their mail is going to that address.
okay.
Yeah, if you could check into that.
Yeah, we'll check that, and of course, there's a process when something like that is going to happen, but we'll see what's going on.
Because they hadn't moved anything, it's just all of a sudden. They don't even know where the address came from.
Let me look into it there. I don't want to try to answer now, but there may
Okay.
have been some conflict through 911, and so typically there's something going on there. So we'll check it out.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and we have, let's see, Counselor Davis.
Mayor, Mr. City Manager, I want you to ask me who my city councilors are.
I will.
You represent yourself.
I got two good ones. I have two. I have two good ones, Councilor Henderson and Councilor Thomas here, but I hope they concur with me and confirm what I'm about to share with you. And is it okay to do it now instead of waiting for the update?
Sure.
Well, and let me try to just go from the light one to the heavy one, but need to, I don't know if we do the maintenance along the right-of-ways on state road. I think we do on state roads. I don't know if the state has anything to do with their signage, those kind of things.
Well,
maybe we do, but the flashing lights right before you get to Double Churches on River Road, the trees have just grown out beyond them.
Okay.
So I don't want that to become an impediment. Somebody might not see it, and anyway, it needs to be, just needs to be cleared. That's the first one. The second one is I've been getting a lot of, and it's been for a while, and I've brought it up here at the council meeting several times about, and I'm talking about Smith Road. Smith Road seems to be the railroad tracks there at Smith Road, where all the industries are out there, the manufacturing industries. You need to ride out there. And if you've got an old car, take your old car, because you don't want to take your new car, because it will tear it up. You go across the railroad tracks, it'll flat out tear it up. And they're right about that. I just went out there again, and, you know, is there any way we can get Norfolk Southern? I think they're responsible for it, but Norfolk Southern could come in there and make some improvements, maybe put those concrete pads.
Yeah.
I'm calling them concrete pads. I know there's probably another term for them, but they seem to work. I know Councilor Garrett has talked about the one on 54th Street, so have I many times. And, you know, if they could do that, it'd just be a tremendous improvement. It's terrible there. And it's bad because it's really bad because of constant wear and tear from all those trucks and all out there. Not only that, the rest of the rest of it is just the wear and tear. And I think people are concerned about I believe they are required to keep all the rocks and dirt and all that stuff off the road. I'm getting a lot of complaints about that, about the maintaining and maintenance aspect of that. I believe they're required to do that. Keep the roads clean, keep them watered down, keep the rocks off. So could you have somebody look at that just to maybe give me an update on it again?
Well, and I will, and Director Newman was just saying they had a conversation with the railroad company about Smith Road just last week. So they're already working
Okay, good. Well, that's
on that. And
hopefully we can get them to move at the speed of light.
yeah, on the, well, not normally. Yeah, that's a very slow process with them.
Okay.
But, and on the first item, we do contract with Georgia DOT for maintenance on state roads, so we'll take a look at that.
Okay, you ready? I'm going to throw you a curveball now.
Okay.
it's been a hot topic in the district I represent. I'm sure some of the other council members have concerns as well, but there's a lot of chatter about coyotes.
Yes.
We know they're an apex predator. We know they're here. We know they hunt. We know they kill. We know they're hard to get rid of. I think as a city, it's safe. I think I'm going to get this right, but the only measure we have, if someone calls animal control, they'll come out and put cages, traps, put some food in them. But if anybody really understands and knows coyotes, the wily coyote, that's what they say. They're extremely intelligent animals, and it's very, very difficult to trap them. Now, I don't know if the city's ever trapped one in the last 2 years. I really don't know. I mean, does anybody know the question of that?
Well, I know, I don't know if we've trapped them, but we have put out traps, and staff, they've been communicating back and forth with me on email all day today about their efforts out there. So I do know that
they're difficult.
Yeah.
I don't know if we've tried. I don't know if we're having success there. But anyway, I guess where I'm going, Mr. City Manager, with this is I know that it is a problem. It's people are really concerned across the board. We've had some of our residents in the area have lost their pets. You know how that hurts bad, and also going out at night and being confronted. And I don't know if maybe it's just this time of the year that they're having young. It's hot. There's not a lot of food out there for them, and they're just getting a little more aggressive. I don't know. I don't know if it's an anomaly or what, but it seems like they're becoming more frequently seen in neighborhoods and close to homes and front doors and backyards and all the rest. And I always tell people that just, you got to go out with your pets and your animals, especially at night, from dusk on, you got to watch them because they're, I hate to say it, but they're prey to these coyotes, especially if they're hungry. There's a couple things I've been thinking about. I know that the state has a program where they're really trying to cut down the populace of coyotes. But I know we have laws in our city too that, as far as hunting goes, that kind of somewhat limited. I'm talking about discharging a firearm. What would it take to allow citizens to protect themselves in situations or to help with this it's an overpopulace, and it's just going to continue to happen? What would it take? Could that happen? Is that something that needs to be discussed?
Well, let me just say that let me have staff communicate with the city attorney's office. I mean, they've done research. They've been boots on the ground today talking to citizens who have either cited or have not seen but think that coyotes are on their property. So I don't want to try to answer that question here tonight, but we will have a work session next Tuesday, and I will have staff to do further research, communicate with the city attorney's office, and maybe try and provide you some response next week.
And and that may be what I'm talking about is extreme, but this is a conversation, okay? We're having a conversation.
Sure.
I'm just putting out what I'm hearing from my constituents, all right? Whether I believe it or not, or whether that's my position or not, that's irrelevant. It's just what I'm hearing. But I know we have stuff now, the castle laws and things like that, where you can protect yourself, protect your property, protect yourself, and I'd have to ask that question, does it apply also in this situation? If you, look, I'm going to tell you right now, if I come up against a wild animal and it's endangering my family, I'll just have to accept the consequences. But
Well, and I saw something today in an email that says, and I'm not advising you or anyone else, that's why I want to talk to the city attorney, said that indicated the animal is a nuisance, and you could actually shoot them. But that is not my advice tonight. I want to consult and verify and then share, provide you with informed information next week.
I'm with you on that. That's really why I'm opening the conversation on this, because I think we need to have it. We need to really have it. The last thing, I know that you can call companies and you know, they're extremely expensive, and you don't know what kind of success rate they're going to have. I mean, there's trappers out there. The next question would be, is that something, I know at one time Councilor Huff was, you know, we addressed the wild hog situation. You know, we had to do we had to take care of some things because they were going into neighborhoods, and, you know, and that's the situation here. Is that something as a city we need to start thinking about hiring trappers or exterminators, call them what you want to call them, but doing something to help provide the safety for our citizens?
And we can also talk about that next week.
Okay.
The one thing that was communicated with me today is, of course, our people are not trained to shoot them, to deal with them, and so we'd have to rely on an outside source like we did with the wild hogs. And so we'll try and address it all next week.
Okay, that's good. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
And we do, the city manager and Councilor Davis are correct, we've been talking about it. We do bring in sharpshooters from time to time to deal with dangerous dogs. And also, we can poison with special permission. The two things, of course, you have to watch are coyotes like to get out at night, which limits the ability of the sharpshooters to do what they need to do. And because they're wild animals, and people aren't feeding them, you know, intending to feed them like sometimes they do with wild dogs that are dangerous, we don't really know when they're going to come around. So we've got staff working on that. And the poison is also an issue because the same thing that attracts a coyote to it is exactly what attracts a dog that you let out to go relieve himself, and then he never comes back. So it's, and that has happened. I don't know if it's happened here, but certainly it happened very recently and very dramatically on federal property and made the national news. So in any event, we're looking into all those things. Okay. Anything else, Councilor Davis?
No, I was thinking when you said that, maybe we can get Delta Force to come in with night vision. No problem. Contract with Fort Benning. I'm just kidding.
All right.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. We've got Councilor Woodson. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, go
City
ahead.
Manager. Just wanted to see, I'm not sure if it goes to you, City Manager, or who would take it. Staff and I were, well, be honest, Rick, Joan, and we were all talking about the walking trail, Follow Me. We're building a bridge, a crossroad bridge over Victory Drive. And we were talking back there and considering it to name it the Owen Sixfield Bridge, based on his history for over 30, 40 years working in the Oakland Park area, being stationed at Fort Benning. He was the train master for the Christmas story each year. And so we thought that would be a great honor. I did call his wife, Ms. Ditchfield, and asked her, and she said it would be a great honor if we did. I told her that probably someone from staff to call her to get some information so we can get the application. So I'd like to recommend then that that bridge be named after Owen Ditchfield.
Okay, and the clerk of
To the
council.
honor board, to be sent to the honor board. I wasn't sure if it was you or Clifton or who, but
Clerk
can
of
we
council.
get that? Or the clerk of council, can we get that sent over? And I gave staff Ms. Mabel's phone number, and someone can call her and get additional information needed. She was very excited when I called her. She said that's really a sweet and great honor that we will even consider looking at naming the bridge after him, and he deserves it for everything he did in Oakland Park. I told her we always didn't meet eye to eye, but I loved him anyway. And so I just wanted to make that recommendation and hope that my colleagues will support it.
Second.
All right, all those in favor, please state aye. Okay,
Thank you very much for this opportunity.
great. Mr. City Manager?
Okay, Madam Mayor, I actually have two updates, but I'm going to not do the pay for elected officials update. We've met with them. We've laid out a plan forward for them through the end of the year, and then each year thereafter, they will receive all of the pay statutorily required by law. They understand how that's going to work through the rest of this month and then through the end of the year. And We've communicated with all of the elected officials. We met with the judges primarily, but then some of the elected officials were not there, and we've communicated with them and sent them direct email correspondence that laid out their pay through the end of the year, and so they all understand, and we believe the matter is resolved with them. So I'm not going to spend time tonight with a presentation unless you want to hear one. And so with that, we'll just move to Complete Streets policy update from Director Rick Jones.
And good evening. I promise I will be brief. You can underscore the word brief here tonight. I want to talk to you real quick about Complete Streets policy. Back in 2014, we established a policy for how we deal with complete streets. And complete streets is simply more than just moving cars and trucks. It's also providing sidewalks, and it's also providing bike lanes and doing landscaping and streetscapes and all that go with it. And that's, we established a policy at that time. And the whole idea really was this idea of establishing a more livable community. We're seeing this every day now in terms of activities with our roadway system, where they have to really serve more than, again, like I said, just more than just the automobiles and trucks. We're getting some things for that in terms of dealing with pedestrians and bicyclists and things of that nature as well. And of course, I don't want to leave out the other major component of complete streets, and that's dealing with the transit itself. Our transit system is that. Yes, this last line on here you need to pay particular attention to, because this is why the policy is so important to us. It does not mean that all roads have got to have bike lanes. That's just simple. Like I said, back in 2014, we established this policy for complete streets. It primarily adopted really what the Georgia Department of Transportation has established statewide for complete streets. At that time, we felt like it was good enough for GDOT, it was good enough for Columbus. We've changed our minds slightly on that a little bit. The proposal we're saying here is we are actually going to set design guidelines. What we're seeing now is when we either when we develop a road, when we resurface a roadway, or whatever the case may be, or have to go back and look at a roadway, the first question we get asked now is, when are you going to put bike lanes on there? Well, I'm here to tell you tonight that not every roadway we have is conducive for having bike lanes on it. But at the same time, though, it does have to have something that we look at and call to our attention about why it doesn't qualify to have bike lanes, or more importantly, why it should have bike lanes in the particular case. This is why we're looking at going in and putting the design guidelines in here, which we got on here. I've got two I indicate to you. The document that you were passed out really has about 5 on here, 5 different standards. This National Association of City Transportation Officials for urban street design, and of course US DOT Federal Highway. Those are 2 key ones there, but there are other factors in terms of looking at design guidelines. We want to establish also a non-compliance committee, and by doing that, that really means and you'll look on here, we talk about bringing various departments together. On that third sheet here, we talk about those being planning and engineering, public works, the folks that have a hands-on experience with this thing on a day-to-day basis, and looking at why or why not this roadway should be considered as a complete street project. In some cases, again, it may well be. In other cases, it may not. Case in point, real quick, is we got a lot of questions when we did the resurfacing of Woodruff Farm between Warm Springs and Manchester. Why we didn't put bike lanes on there? We probably could have looked at it at least, but we didn't have a real good answer, at least in my estimation, why we didn't. This policy, I hope, will establish that. It's not to say, again, they're automatically going to get bike lanes or anything else, but at least it's going to require us as staff to go back and look and see what the criteria should be. The other thing we want to be able to make sure we do is provide you and our citizens an annual report about what activities have been going on for the past year in terms of where we've done some things differently and what we changed and why we didn't change it and things of that nature for that. We wanted to identify, again, how this complete street should be designed. We want to make sure the public right-of-ways are beautiful and inviting by that design itself. We want to make sure it's transparent in how we determine, again, what a complete street should really look like more than anything else. And again, we want to be able to provide our citizens and this council an answer about what's going on, what we've done with our complete streets program for the past year. So as I said, that's brief. What we are planning on doing, I want to give you this kind of a heads-up situation, because we would like to bring this resolution back to you at the next council meeting.
All right, let's see, we have Counselor Henderson.
I like it. I mean, just a quick question, though. This committee would make recommendations based on roadways that are in the process of being widened, where we're adding capacity, or would they also, I'm thinking of 13th Street, or were they also going to make recommendations for restriping to reduce the number of lanes and put bike lanes in?
They're going to look at the situation and whether it warrants it or not, in terms, particularly if you're doing something like a resurfacing project now.
Yeah, pretty much yes or no. I mean,
Yeah, yes, we're going to look at.
That concerns me a little bit, because I'm in favor of this, and I'm in favor of putting those bike lanes and pedestrian lanes anywhere we can. But I think we saw how it can be a very polarizing issue, right, and where you've got people on the committee that obviously have a particular interest in some of those multimodal transportation, alternative transportation. And I guess it just concerns me just a little bit that in a very rare instance where we have another situation like that, that they'll come to us, the public comes to us, won't know what's going on, and then how's that going to integrate with the committee?
The committee itself does not supersede the council. We still come back to council with a recommendation to you from that committee. Again, it requires staff, other than just saying, yeah, we think it's a good idea to do this. It requires us to come back really with a real recommendation based on something other than the fact we think it might be a good idea.
Right.
Does that make sense?
No, it does, and that's what, I think that's what they did with 13th Street. They had some really good data. It's just that there was a wildly differing opinion with another group of people, and that puts us in the position of having to kind of make that decision. So I do like it. I think that it's forward-thinking, and it's given us an opportunity to get citizen input on how we move more efficiently and effectively and frankly, more cleanly around the community. But I do think it's vitally important that council still be ultimately involved in the decision of whether or not we'll do any traffic calming by lane reduction or anything like that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, we've got more discussion. Counselor Thomas.
Mr. Jones, one of my concerns Counselor Henderson hit on was how much of this will come back to council for our approval and so forth. And one of the things that I've been looking at in the last week or so, particularly is that 13th Street process. And also 13th Avenue, where the turn lanes on 13th Avenue were taken away, and a bike lane was put on 13th Avenue down to Linwood Boulevard, and then a bike lane, excuse me, from 13th Avenue, from 5 Points there, down Linwood Boulevard to 10th Avenue. And it seemed to me that as I drove that, Linwood Boulevard, having that piece of the roadway taken up for a bike lane, becomes very, very narrow. And it would, as I rode that area, I thought it would make more sense to me to take that bike lane one more block to 17th Street, go down to 17th Street that hits the rails to trails down by the hospital, and also take that bike lane straight on out 13th Avenue to Toppleton Road, where again it hits the rails to trails. And I don't want you to bring every change in every road back to this council. I think that's too much. But I do think that perhaps what we may want to do, and with this committee's input, is set some kind of standards. If the road is not X feet wide, you don't put a bike lane on it, that sort of thing. So, our road, Macon Road and Buena Vista Road are the two major east-west corridors through this town. And our road-making road from Lynch Road, Highway 80, down here to where it becomes Winnan Road, down the hill on 13th, left on on 13th Street, and kept riding all the way to Ladonia, 18 miles. And that 18 miles is, every bit of it is at least a 2-lane, if not a 3-lane road. And what we were being asked to do on 13th Street was 0.6 of a mile, pull it down to 2 lanes and 1 lane on either side instead of the 2 lanes. So there's some of those kinds of things, and Buena Vista Road is the same thing. I think that corridor is about 16 miles, and it's all 2 or 3 lane road, with the exception of a very small piece out by Brown Avenue. And so when we're looking at those kinds of configurations, first of all, I think bike lanes are great wherever we can put them, where they do not endanger the rider and or the driver of the car that's trying not to hit the bicyclist. So I guess one of my questions would be, do you anticipate that some of the things that this committee would do would have to come back to us for approval, and some of the things would not come back to us for approval?
I want to answer that as best I know how, and I want to say probably yes in that regard, because it's kind of a loaded question, really, because we want to make sure we keep everybody informed about what's going on. What we don't have right now is in place is really what I consider a defensible system or a defensible answer. I mean, we give you our best professional opinion, but sometimes we sometimes stand alone in terms of doing that. We want to make sure that we look at things, because we do get requests now for roadways to be looked at for, again, for like bikeways or sidewalks or whatever. Sidewalks is also a good issue. We got to have some way where I know how to answer that question and give these folks an answer that is best of our knowledge and best of our ability type answer, other than, yeah, we think so, or maybe not. We got to be able to answer that question. And that's why we're going back and looking at this. We have taken this really from other communities and looked at what they have done and the success they've had and some of the failures as well. This is not designed to be that cure-all for everything, but it is, I think, it's a step in the right direction to help us get the projects at least identified and make sure that they do comply with everything we're trying to do as a community.
Well, and I will say, even, we'll see what the standards will be, but even if we don't ask you for action, we're going to update you and tell you that here's what we're going to do and when we're going to do it, and with no request for action, so that you will know and the public will know. And I know, and this is one way to get the word out, so that citizens won't get caught by surprise and say, well, I didn't know that was coming, and well, we don't want to be in a position you didn't know it was coming because we didn't bring it to council because we didn't have to. So we'll whether it's...
And I think that's all we can ask, Mr. City Manager, is that this council set the standards, if you will, not only with certainly the advice of the planning department. I have no idea how wide Linwood Boulevard ought to be before that bike lane is a good place to be, but planning knows that, and so we need to have that kind of input, I think, as we develop standards for them to use. And the standard, again, we have standards now in our codes and so forth, and if we need to make a special exception, we have a process to do that. And that's what I would hope would come back, not only the standard, but if there is a need for a special exception, how is that handled?
Okay.
Sure. Okay.
All right, we have Councilor Woodson.
Rick, once you finish this process, are we going to go back and look at the ones that we have established now, the bike trails that we established now? Because I have a little concern about the one here when you're coming off Macon Road and you turn to Rigdon Park, Rigdon Road, right here when we're going to come into the parking lot. Like when we leave here at night, when we leave here, if we make a right to get on the road there, there's one there, and I think it's such a dangerous place because that traffic is really busy during the day. And every time I go on this road, when I leave here, I always think, this is the most dangerous place for a biker to be. So I hope we can consider later looking at where we put them, if that's actually a good place for them to be.
We can do that, certainly.
Okay, thank you.
All right, that concludes discussion on this item.
I've just got an announcement that the deputy city manager needs to make.
Sure. This is just an announcement. I've passed out to you the information from GDOT for the Casita Road, Old Casita Road improvements and interchange. There will be a public meeting. It's a GDOT public meeting. It will be an open house. It's Tuesday, next Tuesday, August 29th, from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. at the Casita Road Child Development Center at 4150 Casita Road. And so this is the information packet that they will be passing out. They'll have boards set up throughout the room, GDOT representatives to answer questions from the citizens. So we just want to get the word out to attend this meeting. This is a T-SPLOS project that was approved by the voters, and so GDOT will be managing this project for us. And again, this is a public meeting held by GDOT. We would like the citizens' input.
Okay. Oh, we've got, I'm sorry, Counselor.
Yeah, I was speaking to somebody earlier. That's the Enrichment Services Building, the old school, Southern Junior High School, Casita Road Elementary School.
I think so. I think so. It's at 4150 Casita Road.
Yeah. I wanted to say that to the public because they know that as the old Casita Road Elementary. Well, I went there,
Okay.
It was Southern Junior High School. Then it became Casita Road Elementary School, and now the Enrichment Services program's there, so I don't know what name's on the building. Just want to make sure they don't get lost.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
That concludes my agenda.
All right, and now we have the clerk's agenda. Madam Clerk.
Madam Mayor and members of council, on the clerk's agenda, we've got several items of information, several biographical sketches of Mr. Tom Barron, who's interested in serving on our Retirees Health Benefits Committee, biographical sketch of Mr. Robert Battle. This is Uptown Columbus recommendation for the Uptown Facade Board. Biographical sketch of Mr. David Helmick, who's interested in a Columbus Aquatic Center. Biographical sketch of Ms. Joy Humphreys, who is interested in our Animal Control Advisory Board. Biographical sketch for the Circle Commission. Then we've got 2 temporary street closing applications for the Uptown Friday Night Concert Series, which starts September the 8th, as well as an event for the St. Luke United Methodist Church for October 22nd. Have a letter of resignation from Mr. Samuels resigning from.
Got a motion that it be received with regrets and a second. All those in favor, please state aye.
Second.
I've got a motion and second that minutes be received. All those in favor, please state aye.
On our board appointments, on our Animal Control Advisory Board, Dr. Scott McDermott, who represents the Veterinary Association, is not eligible. We'll be making contact with them for a recommendation. Also, Mr. Timothy Butts is eligible to succeed himself for another term, as well as Ms. Becky Carter. Okay. We'll bring this back at our next meeting for confirmation. Board of Honor, Ms. Beth Harris is.
The biographical sketch for Ms. Joy Humphreys, you said is Paul's nominee for Mr. Barwick. See, we don't have that.
Right, we don't have that listed. we were waiting to receive the official notification from the PAWS, and I understand they will be getting that to us next week.
So it'll be on your agenda next go-round?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
On the Board of Honor, Ms. Beth Harris, she is eligible to serve. On our Building Authority, we still need someone for Mr. Kel Jackson's seat. On the Columbus Aquatics Commission, Mr. Brandon Wallace has resigned. Okay. Then Ms. Kara Abraham has also resigned from the Columbus Aquatics Commission.
Isn't there somebody else on there before we got the
No, that was the only recommendation we had was Mr. Helmick. Then on the Convention and Trade Center Authority, Mr. Robert Noble's term will be expiring. He is not eligible to succeed himself. This is the mayor's appointment. On a Circle Commission, if someone wants to nominate the Councilor Woodson. On our Community Development Advisory Council, Councilor Garrett, Mr. Davis has resigned. We'll need a new recommendation for that seat. On the Keep Columbus Beautiful Commission, we're working with Keep Columbus Beautiful Commission for a recommendation for that seat. And on our Public Safety Advisory, Dr. Dothel Edwards, his term will be expiring. He is eligible. Okay, because it's a district appointment, he can be confirmed. Councilor Davis.
Got a motion for confirmation and a second. All those in favor, please state aye.
Ms. Geraldine Buckner represents District 4. She is eligible to serve again.
We've got a motion for confirmation. Is there a second? All those in favor, please state aye.
Councilor Allen has nominated Mr. John House. He can be confirmed.
We've got a motion and second for confirmation. All those in favor, please state aye.
And Mr. Murray Anderson, he's not eligible. We'll need a replacement for District 8, as well as Mr. Willie Belfield for District 10. On our Recreation Advisory Board, we're working on a recommendation for District 2. For District 7, Councilor Woodson is nominating Ms. Haley Lyman, and she can be confirmed.
We've got a motion and a second. All those in favor, please state aye.
On the Uptown Facade Board, we are waiting to hear back from them. I'm sorry, on Mr. Reggie Luther's seat, he is eligible. And for, excuse me, Mr. Roger Stinson, they are recommending Mr. Robert Battle. He can be confirmed.
Got a motion and second for confirmation. All those in favor, please state aye.
On our Youth Advisory Council for District 4, Mayor Pro Tem is nominating Ms. Kyrie Dees.
Got a motion and second for confirmation. All those in favor, please state aye.
And
Okay. We've got a motion and second for confirmation of Mr. Townsend. All those in favor, please state aye.
and that's all I
Okay.
have, Madam
And
Mayor.
Tiny, I do have a nomination for the Convention Visitor, no, excuse me, the Trade Center, was it?
Yes.
Yes, that's Robert Culpepper.
What, Culpepper? Okay.
Got a motion and second for confirmation. All those in favor, please state aye.
That's all I have, Madam Mayor.
All right, great. I believe that concludes our agenda. There being nothing further, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. All those in favor, please state aye. All right, and we're adjourned. We'll see you next week for a work session. Look forward to it. Thank you.